Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Wilma Andersson. Wilma Andersson was born to Linda and Marcus Andersson after her parents divorced. Wilma moved in with her older sister Emily. Despite this difficult situation, Wilma's mother remained closely involved in her life. According to her mother Linda, Wilma was an active and ambitious girl who loved to socialize with people. She loved social media, often sharing photos of her life on Facebook, and enjoyed every opportunity to be captured in photos. At the age of 15, Wilma met Tishko Ahmed Sherzad, 20, in Sweden. Wilma's mother was concerned about her daughter dating someone older, but she trusted Wilma's choice and eventually accepted their relationship. Tishko, who is originally from Iraq, moved to Sweden at the age of 8 to live with her father and stepmother. He became a Swedish citizen in 2014 and eventually found a job in the care industry after completing his studies in 2018. Wilma and Tishko's relationship took a significant step forward when they moved in together in Uddevalla, Sweden. At first, things went smoothly, but over time, their relationship changed and became increasingly troubled. Tishko began to become more controlling, which Wilma's mother noticed, a change in her daughter's behavior during the 2 years Wilma lived with Tishko. Wilma often spoke to her sister Emily about the problems she was having with Tishko. On November 14, 2019, Wilma spoke to Emily on the phone when she went to Tishko's apartment to collect her belongings. During the call, Wilma expressed her intention to end her relationship with Tishko, citing his excessive control over her life. She felt suffocated by his behavior, dictating what she wore, where she went, who she saw, and even how she applied her makeup. Feeling suffocated by his domineering and abusive behavior, she had had enough and just wanted it to end. When Tishko returned home from work, Wilma ended the call. Emily then tried to contact Wilma, but she was unable to reach her. The next day, November 15th, Wilma missed a scheduled dentist appointment. 2 days later, on November 17th, Wilma's parents visited the apartment she shared with her boyfriend. After knocking on the door, a moment later, the door slowly opened and they saw Tishko. Linda was worried and asked Tishko where Wilma was. Tishko told them that he and Wilma had broken up and that she had left after packing her things. He claimed that he did not know where she was and did not expect to see her again. Linda and her husband went into the apartment to try to find out more information by talking to Tishko. Tishko told them what had happened that night, saying that he and Wilma had gotten into a big argument when he got home from work at 5:30 p.m., which ended with Wilma leaving him. Wilma's parents were not too concerned about her absence at first, as her relationship with Tishko was often argumentative and unstable. However, Wilma's sister, Emily, became increasingly concerned and turned to Facebook for help. In her post, Emily explained that Wilma had been missing since November 14th and had not contacted her family, which was unusual for her. Emily described Wilma as being 165 centimeters tall with black hair with blonde highlights. She stressed that this disappearance was out of character for Wilma and expressed her deep concern for her sister's safety. The police were involved, taking a report and starting to collect statements from family and friends. Their goal was to reconstruct her recent activities and interactions. They interviewed those who had last seen or spoken to her. Linda and Emily confirmed that they had not had contact with Wilma since November 14th, noting that their attempts to call her had gone unanswered. A search party was organized, combining the efforts of the police with those of her friends and family, using dogs and drone technology to scan inaccessible areas for any traces. When police questioned Tishko, he denied knowing where Wilma was and said he had not heard from her recently. By Sunday, November 17th, 3 days after Wilma went missing, there was still no sign of her. This was especially worrying because Wilma, who posted frequently on social media, had been completely inactive for an unusually long period of time. The situation became more urgent, prompting some 5,000 people to join the search for her. Police continued to question Tishko, seeking more information, but he maintained that he had no knowledge of Wilma's whereabouts. He claimed that after they broke up, she had moved on to someone else. However, there was no evidence to support this, leaving her loved ones confused and worried. At the same time, Wilma's family revealed a heartbreaking story to the police, lamenting how their daughter's life had taken a drastic turn since she became involved with Tishko, creating a bleak contrast to her once vibrant and sociable self. Linda revealed that Tishko had complete control over her, constantly telling her what to do and monitoring her every move. Emily shared some disturbing information that Wilma had told her. It was clear that Tishko had become violent in their relationship. Despite the abuse, Wilma still had strong feelings for Tishko. Tishko's level of control was so extreme that he even attached a GPS tracking device to Wilma's phone, allowing him to know her location at all times. A series of text messages between Wilma and Tishko revealed a disturbing control in their relationship. An exchange from a previous argument showed that Wilma had asked Tishko to contact her when he felt he could trust her. As part of the investigation, police looked into Tishko's alibi for the time. Tishko claimed he had been in the apartment after returning from work at 5 p.m. To verify this, police tracked Tishko's movements using GPS tracking on his phone. Surveillance footage showed Tishko at the supermarket at 2:30 p.m. on the day Wilma went missing. He returned home from work at 5 p.m. Around 6 p.m., neighbors reported a loud and escalating argument between the couple, louder than their usual disagreements. A concerned neighbor decided to check on them but was met with an unsettling silence as they approached the apartment door. The sudden silence was unnerving, and the neighbor, not knowing what to do, returned to their apartment. Police continued to investigate Wilma's disappearance, carefully analyzing Tishko's activities. They expanded their search to his workplace and company vehicle, requesting forensic analysis. The car's GPS showed that he had been traveling from Thursday, the 14th, to Monday, the 18th. The GPS log showed that he visited clients and returned home during his regular work hours on those days. On the day of the dispute, Tishko's phone showed that he left his apartment at 6:30 p.m. Witnesses saw him walking along the highway, alone and dressed all in black. A motorcyclist described Tishko as deep in thought about something. Tishko was stopped by police and taken home. When questioned, Tishko said he had initially wanted to catch a train, but then changed his mind and walked home. Curiously, the police did not file a report after the encounter. On November 19, 2019, while the investigation was still ongoing, police noticed that he had visible scratches on his forearms. After obtaining a search warrant for his apartment, police found several of Wilma's belongings, including a handbag, jacket, shoes, and eyeglasses. Wilma's mother, Linda, said her daughter always carried the bag with her, making the discovery even more suspicious. Police examined the scene with Blue Star, a high-tech version of luminol. The results revealed ominous bloodstains on the walls and floors throughout the apartment, suggesting a violent struggle. As police reconstructed the events, a chilling story began to emerge. Bloodstains stretched from the living room to the bedroom, suggesting something, or someone, had been dragged. Even the bed bore a dark imprint, a haunting shape of a torso highlighted by the bright light of the blue star. Police also discovered muscle tissue on a knife and blood splatter on the living room wall. The large amount of blood found at the scene indicated a violent incident, making the possibility of survivors very low. When police searched outside the apartment, they discovered trash bags containing Tishko's bed sheets with blood stains on them. When questioned at the police station, Tishko denied knowing anything about the blood stains and said he would have noticed if there had been more blood in his house. As the search for Wilma continued, more and more people joined in, hoping to find her and provide a glimmer of hope amid the growing tragedy. The apartment where Wilma was last seen became a grim crime scene, but attempts to find her were unsuccessful. On November 28, 2 weeks after Wilma went missing, police brought in sniffer dogs to help search the crime scene. These specially trained dogs can detect the scent of a dead person. When they entered the bedroom, one of the dogs quickly indicated that there was a possibility of a corpse or human remains. The apartment was also filled with a distinct and unpleasant odor. Although the police had searched the bedroom before, they searched thoroughly again, focusing on the area the dogs had marked. They focused on a dresser, which appeared to be just another piece of furniture in the room, but inside the otherwise innocuous dresser was a small travel suitcase, which seemed inconspicuous among the other items in the room. After opening it, they discovered a large object wrapped in kitchen foil inside the suitcase. When they opened the foil, they were met with a horrifying and heartbreaking truth. Wilma's severed head had been carefully wrapped and tied with tape inside the foil. The travel case, containing evidence of Wilma's horrific events, was sent to the Gothenburg Forensic Laboratory for further examination. A detailed examination revealed Tishko's fingerprints, which linked him to the heinous act. The investigation revealed the shocking brutality of the crime. Although pathologists were unable to determine Wilma's exact cause of death, they discovered severe injuries to her head and eyes caused by blunt force trauma. The decapitation had also caused further head injuries. Wilma's family was devastated by her news. Her mother, Linda, joined the search efforts for the rest of Wilma's body. The family was confronted with horrifying details of the case, including evidence found on the walls of the apartment. It became clear that Wilma's final moments may have taken place in the living room, where she was violently attacked. A severe blow to the head ended her life, leaving a haunting reminder of the violence. Swedish police filed a report detailing Tishko's denial of Wilma's murder, strongly asserting his innocence. Despite Tishko's claims, police had enough evidence to charge him with the crime and his trial was set for May 2020. However, Wilma's body was not found during the trial. Tishko showed no remorse or emotion throughout the investigation. Reports revealed that he had a disturbing view of his ex-girlfriend, associating her with evil and making bizarre claims that she was working with the Democrats against then-US President Donald Trump. Tishko's bizarre obsession with the president led him to attempt to join Trump's campaign. But his application was rejected due to incomplete records. During his trial, his defense team attempted to argue that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, citing his bizarre beliefs and statements about Wilma as evidence. However, this defense was unsuccessful. On July 27, 2020, a court found Tishko Ahmed Sherzad, 23, guilty of the murder of 17-year-old Wilma Andersson and sentenced him to life in prison, which was later reduced to 18 years by an appeals court. The inexplicable reduction in sentence stems from the lack of concrete evidence to pinpoint the exact cause of Wilma's death or the course of events since her body was not there, a haunting absence that leaves important questions unanswered, hindering the pursuit of justice. In 2020, Wilma's funeral marked the sad end to her story, causing immense pain for her family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ben Rennick. Ben Rennick was born in August 1987 in Missouri. He grew up in a rural area with his family, including his older brother Sam, with whom he was very close. In 1989, the Rennick family moved to a picturesque farm. There, the two brothers enjoyed the outdoors, and it was during this time that Ben developed a passion for snakes. In September 1992, a tragic incident occurred for the Rennick family. While they were away, a gas leak caused an explosion that destroyed their beautiful home. As a result, the family was forced to move into a trailer. Later, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. Despite the hardships they faced, the Rennick family remained united and supported each other through every challenge. After previous hardships, the family moved to a new house in 2002. Here, Ben was given a room to raise snakes. In 2009, after a long battle with cancer, Mrs. Kim passed away. Before she died, she asked her sons to promise to continue taking care of the farm and pass it on to the next generation. With an endless passion for snakes, Ben founded the company Rennick Reptiles, which quickly gained wide recognition. Thanks to this, he was able to export snakes to many countries around the world, from the UK to Japan. Snake breeding became his passion and purpose in life. He was known as an excellent breeder, dedicated to his work and more concerned with his love for snakes than profit. His reptile farm successfully bred and propagated many species of reptiles, from common species to some of the rarest in the world. The value of Ben's reptile collection was enormous. The snakes in his collection alone were estimated to be worth over $1 million. However, Ben felt lonely and wanted to have a family. In 2010, at a party, he met Lindley, and they quickly developed a relationship. Just a few weeks later, Ben introduced Lindley to his brother Sam and Sam's fiancé Eli. Both Eli and Lindley had children from previous relationships, which made it easy for them to connect and become friends. Lindley quickly integrated into the Rennick family and moved in with them. She helped Ben take care of the snake farm. They fell in love and lived like a real family, although they were not officially married. In March 2012, Lindley gave birth to a baby girl named Amelia. Ben was very happy to be a father. However, their happy family life once again encountered difficulties. Frank Rennick, Ben's father, faced serious business difficulties. Before that, he made several illegal stock trades to pay for Kim's medical and treatment expenses. The day before the FBI was scheduled to come to investigate the farm, Frank committed suicide. His death put an end to the investigation. Frank's sons once again faced the pain of losing a loved one. Ben inherited the house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money much larger than the value of the house. Although each had their own families, they lived together as one big family in their parents' house. Sam did not hesitate to use his inheritance to renovate the farm, demonstrating the bond and solidarity between the two brothers. Initially, the relationship between the two brothers was quite good. However, financial disagreements soon caused a rift. After their father passed away, Ben focused on his business and family. He decided to marry Lindley on April 14, 2014, officially making her a member of the Rennick family. Later, Lindley and Ben opened a new business together, Essentia Spa Incorporated. However, the business managed by Lindley encountered financial difficulties. Ben and Lindley often argued about financial issues. Although Lindley worked very hard, her income was still not enough to cover the salon's expenses. Meanwhile, Sam and his wife were also having financial difficulties. Ben allowed Sam and his wife to sell some of the furniture in their house to raise more money, but Lindley did not agree with this decision. This incident led to a conflict between the two families, causing serious damage to their relationship that could not be repaired. Ben decided to improve his family's finances by selling some rare reptiles at a high price. However, this plan failed due to a serious incident at the farm. On June 8, 2017, Lindley entered one of the warehouses and found Ben lying motionless in a pool of blood on the floor. Panicking, Lindley called her brother Sam and the emergency services for help. She reported that she had found her husband lying unconscious on the ground. During the conversation, Lindley dropped the phone and ran away. Sam continued the call and confirmed that his brother had passed away. He suspected that the cause of death could be a snake bite. The Montgomery County Sheriff was called to a snake farm for the first time in many years. Law enforcement officers were nervous about entering the farm, which housed more than 3,000 snakes. They were to examine a man lying in a pool of blood and were on guard against a possible attack by a venomous viper, which was initially believed to have caused the victim's death. When police investigator Dave Colbert arrived at the scene and examined it closely, he discovered a shell casing on a shelf at eye level. This discovery suggested that this was not a snake bite, as initially thought, but a more serious homicide. The shell casing was found near Ben's body, but no weapon was found. The killer had shot the victim multiple times in the back and head. Remarkably, no one in the family heard the gunshots or saw the attacker. Sam and Lindley were summoned to the sheriff's office for questioning. Lindley suspected Sam of being involved in her husband's death and provided a clear motive that Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was adamantly opposed. To clarify the matter, Sam was asked to take a lie detector test, which he successfully passed. The police released Lindley and Sam because there was not enough evidence to hold them. An investigation into the motive for Ben's murder was launched. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, but this theory was not confirmed, as all the rare snakes and valuables were still intact at the scene. Just a few days after Ben's death, the police questioned Lindley. They tested her hands and clothes for gunpowder, but the results were negative. After her husband's funeral, Lindley cut off contact with Sam and Eli. She sold her husband's company, inherited the house, and filed a $1 million life insurance claim on Ben. After receiving the insurance money, Lindley decided to sell the Rennick family home for $740,000. The Rennick family was told they would have to move. Sam began to suspect his brother's wife of being involved in Ben's death when he discovered that the insurance claim was settled quickly and the family business was sold shortly thereafter. Sam shared his suspicions with the investigating authorities. As a result, Lindley was brought in for further questioning. During the interrogation, Lindley admitted to having a complicated relationship with her husband, Ben. She also revealed that she occasionally met another man named Eric. However, Eric was ruled out as a suspect because he had an alibi. What was shocking was Lindley's confession that about 3 years after marrying Ben, she had been having affairs with at least 2 other men. Text messages between Ben and his wife showed that he suspected her of having an affair, causing tension in their relationship. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri Highway Patrol administered a lie detector test to Lindley, which she failed. However, due to a lack of concrete evidence in the case, she was released. Although progress has slowed, the investigation into Ben's death continues. A report of police reports shows, a month before Ben Rennick's death, Lindley made her first attempt to kill her husband. She fabricated a story about Ben being an abusive husband who regularly abused and beat her. Lindley told this story to a coworker at the spa, hoping to gain sympathy and support. Investigators discovered this after Ben died. Lindley Rennick and her accomplice conspired to kill Ben by mixing 15 Percocet pills into a protein shake. Ben drank the shake without realizing it, making him seriously ill for a while, but he eventually survived. Ben had no idea he had been poisoned. Investigators subsequently questioned Lindley 6 times about the incident. A surprising breakthrough in the investigation occurred on January 14, 2020, when a key piece of information was revealed from a state prison. A witness named Brandon Blackwell claimed to know about Ben's death. Brandon told Missouri State Highway Patrol investigators that Lindley was the one who shot Ben and that she had conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon revealed that he and Lindley had been having an affair while she was still married to Ben. A year and a half after Ben's death, Brandon and Lindley had a child together. However, they broke up in 2019. Brandon claimed that Lindley had admitted to him that she had been having affairs, specifically with Ashley Shaw, a co-worker at the spa where she worked, and Michael Humphrey, another ex-boyfriend. Years after Ben's death, Lindley and her ex-lover Michael Humphrey were arrested in connection with Ben's death. However, after their arrests, both blamed each other. The question remains, who really killed Ben? According to Michael's testimony, on the day of the incident, he accompanied Lindley to the farm. Lindley asked Michael to pretend to be the buyer and wear gloves. Although initially assigned to shoot Ben, Michael failed to do so. In the end, Lindley took the gun and shot her husband to death. The investigation into Ben's death lasted 3 years. By January 16, 2020, authorities had issued arrest warrants for 3 suspects: Lindley, Michael Humphrey, and Ashley Shaw. Ashley was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation in the case. She testified in court against her former employer. The former spa employee revealed that Lindley had been complaining about her husband and had convinced her to join in on the scheme. She told that Lindley claimed that Ben had been demeaning, insulting, and even physically abusive to Lindley. Fearing that she would lose custody of their children after the divorce, Lindley decided to get rid of her husband, Ben. She and Michael conspired to poison Ben with a lethal cocktail. When questioned, Lindley and Michael blamed each other for Ben's death. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey appeared in court in Inne County. His attorney hoped that revealing the murder weapon would reduce the charge to second-degree murder. Although Michael had the gun involved, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it. To get his sentence reduced, Michael cooperated with prosecutors by revealing the location of the murder weapon. As a result, he was convicted of second-degree murder, a lesser charge. On January 3, 2021, no plea was entered, and Michael was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Lindley's trial began on December 6, 2021. She was charged with fatally shooting her husband, Ben, on June 8, 2017, at his snake farm in New Florence. According to court records, the plan to kill Ben began at Lindley's spa. According to the statement, Lindley may have made up the story about domestic violence because she feared that Ben would learn of her financial difficulties and take away her children. The first time Lindley attempted to kill Ben, she tried to spike his protein shake with narcotics. The trial detailed the day of Ben's murder, replaying the entire sequence of events through cross-examination. On the day of the murder, Michael picked up Lindley at the spa. Ashley also used Lindley's phone to send text messages from inside the spa, creating false evidence of their location and misleading the investigation. According to court records, Michael intended to kill Ben but asked Lindley to do it. After the shooting, Michael tried to collect all the shell casings but missed some in his haste. He then returned to the spa and threw away Lindley's clothes after she showered, in an attempt to remove gunpowder residue from her body and clothes from the day of the murder. Defense attorney Catherine Barrer asked Lindley to share her personal and family history, her education, her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Michael, as well as her work history and the events that led to her marriage to Ben. The lawyer presented Lindley as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence of such violence was found, which weakened this defense. Michael was part of a group accused of planning to kill Ben. Lindley described her relationship with Michael as complex and codependent, involving Michael's drug dealing and her drug addiction. According to witness testimony, Lindley ended her relationship with Michael in late 2010, but they reconnected about a month before Ben's death. Lindley denied the prosecution's allegations of planning to kill Ben, including trying to poison him with a protein shake laced with an addictive substance. In court, Lindley admitted to having affairs with several men and expressed deep remorse. When considering divorce, she did not know who to turn to for advice. As her father was divorced and held strong views on divorce and adultery, Lindley wanted support when talking to Ben, so she contacted her ex-boyfriends, which led to her reconnecting with Michael. During the trial, Lindley admitted to participating in her husband's death and concealing Michael's involvement. She said the reasons were marital problems, including arguments, allegations of abuse by Ben, and stress related to his snake business. Fearful of Ben's reaction to the divorce, Lindley brought Michael to the farm on June 8, 2017. She claimed that her intention was to file for divorce, not to harm Ben. Lindley said that she took Ben's trash to throw away, then went into the nursery and saw Michael and Ben washing their hands. She did not hear their conversation because she was focused on thinking about how to talk to Ben about the divorce. Lindley recounted in a trembling voice how Michael pulled out a gun and shot her husband. She screamed and ran outside, hearing several more gunshots. Shocked and panicked, she only remembers staring at the trees as Michael ran up and pushed her toward the car. When she returned to the snake farm, Lindley discovered Ben's body. She called Ben's brother, Sam, and they checked to see if Ben was still alive by checking his pulse and breathing. Lindley expressed regret for not telling the police right away that she was there with Michael and for not telling them what happened. Due to suspicions of her involvement in her husband's death, the $1 million life insurance policy Ben had purchased long ago could be contested. Lindley has waived her right to the money. Ben became the beneficiary of a trust fund after his father's death. The assets belonged to Ben and his children, not Lindley. However, Lindley received the money she contributed to the trust fund, along with her daughter's scholarship. Lindley admitted to seeking support by sharing her story with her then-boyfriend, Brandon Blackwell. However, the relationship ended shortly after Lindley gave birth to Brandon's child. At trial, Lindley expressed regret for repeatedly lying. "I was just trying to avoid the truth of what happened," she said, and insisted she never wanted her husband to die. Following the final verdict, Lindley's defense team did not file a motion for a new trial. No appeals have been filed against her conviction. However, Lindley filed a defamation lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming that his statements about her involvement in her husband's death were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Lindley's testimony during cross-examination. He asked why she did not check on her husband after hearing the gunshots, why she did not call 911, why she sent friendly text messages to her husband and Michael after the shooting, and why she continued to lie even after emergency responders were involved. Prosecutor Kevin portrayed Lindley as a clumsy but ruthless mastermind in the murder. Lindley admitted to suggesting that police consider Ben's brother, the victim, as a suspect. During the trial, Kevin criticized Lindley's coldness in accusing the deceased's brother. During the sentencing hearing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Lindley broke down and cried but still did not admit her guilt. On December 9, 2021, Lindley, 33, was convicted of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 13 years in prison for the murder and an additional 3 years for the armed criminal action. In total, Judge Kevin Crane sentenced her to 16 years in prison the following January. Sam and Ben's family were furious about the sentence. They believe that both Michael and Lindley deserve life in prison, as they are as guilty as their co-defendants. Sam expressed deep disappointment and surprise when he realized that in Missouri, a human life is only valued at 13 years in prison. Ben was a promising young man. However, due to the actions of a woman, he and Sam fell into an awkward situation, causing irreparable damage to their relationship. Despite this, Ben continued to live a dignified life. He became famous for his talent in breeding snakes and even created a new species of snake named after him. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont. His life was complicated and difficult from a young age. Michael witnessed his parents repeatedly physically and mentally abusing each other, and he himself was also subjected to this abuse. When Michael was young, his father went to prison for unclear reasons, leaving him feeling empty and deeply affected. His mother remarried and had another son, Dana, bringing some happiness to Michael's life. However, their home life remained troubled. Michael's stepfather had trouble maintaining stable employment, which put a financial strain on his mother, forcing her to work 2 jobs to support the family. The stepfather was aggressive toward Michael and Dana. He used physical punishment. This has created an atmosphere that makes people feel scared and controlled. Michael was harshly punished for small mistakes, such as being late to school, and was often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Michael's difficult life did not harden him. Instead, he showed kindness and a strong instinct to protect others, particularly his younger brother Dana. He is often the one to admit mistakes and take punishment for Dana, which brings the 2 brothers closer. Dana admired Michael's courage and love. Michael's stepfather was extremely controlling and rarely allowed him to interact with other children. His mother was too afraid of her husband to stand up for Michael or herself. This created a home environment that was isolated, secretive, and oppressive. With no outside help, Michael and Dana suffered ongoing abuse. The neighbors suspected that something was wrong in the household. In a desperate attempt to escape, Michael ran away from home but didn't know where to go. He was eventually found by authorities and shared the sad story of his family life. Unfortunately, no one helped him with his situation. Michael had difficulty expressing his genuine emotions, instead concealing them beneath a facade of indifference. He struggled with depression in his teenage years, which significantly impacted his mental well-being. However, at school, he found some relief from his struggles. Despite being introverted and feeling lonely, having responsibilities helped distract him from his difficult home life. Fortunately, Michael met Dorothy, a local business owner. Dorothy introduced him to her daughter, and although the daughter's name is not known, but Michael formed a strong bond with her. As time passed, their friendship blossomed into romance, navigating its share of highs and lows. This relationship brought out Michael's gentle, thoughtful, and cautious nature, revealing a more nuanced side of his personality. Dorothy was happy to see Michael in a new light, but at the same time, she felt concerned. She observed that he became uneasy whenever it was time to go home. Despite her daughter's frequent visits with Michael, he made a concerted effort to keep her away from his residence. Concerned by these signs, Dorothy decided to have deeper conversations with Michael. Michael eventually opened up to Dorothy about his concerns for his mother and brother's well-being. This enabled Dorothy to recognize the emotional burden and suffering that Michael was experiencing. After finishing high school, Michael enlisted in the United States Navy, which marked the start of a new chapter in his life. The Navy instills in him a sense of direction and purpose within a highly organized environment. As Michael developed a strong affection for the Navy, he realized that he had made the right choice. His newfound sense of happiness is largely due to his close relationship with his teammates. Although he would occasionally drink, Michael was always responsible and showed up for work, proving to be a calm and composed individual. During this time, Michael was dating a colleague. However, he quickly realized that the relationship was unhealthy when she became violent towards him. This brought back painful memories of his childhood. As his depression worsened, he realized he needed to end the relationship. Following the breakup, Michael dedicated himself to furthering his career. He pursued specialized training in combat medical care, which ultimately led to his appointment as a medic in the Marine Corps. Afterward, Michael met Sarah, and they fell deeply in love, eventually getting married. After getting married, Michael resigned from the Marines so he could devote his time to supporting his wife. Sarah had a positive impact on Michael's life, encouraging him to make good choices. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was determined to be a devoted father, providing them with the best possible upbringing. In their relationship, Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, but Michael was always supportive of her choices. In 2011, Sarah found a job in Orange County, Central Florida, and the family moved there. She worked at the Mount Dora Animal Hospital, which was managed by Beau Delaporte. After Michael had difficulty finding a job, Sarah convinced Delaporte to take him on. She also emphasized the experience Michael had gained from his previous job. Michael quickly settled into his new role and showed outstanding commitment. Michael emanated happiness and had a clear passion for his work. Michael's positive demeanor made him highly sought after by pet owners. His employers, particularly Delaporte, grew fond of him, and their relationship blossomed into a strong friendship built on trust. Delaporte even entrusted him with some management responsibilities at the animal hospital. In 2014, Delaporte hired KCI, a new veterinary technician. Born on December 23, 1986, in Ion, Indiana, KCI was the second of 3 daughters to Nikki and David. She had 2 siblings, named Sarah and Brandy. She brought immense joy and positivity to her family, and also spread that energy to those around her. As KCI grew older, her love and concern for those around her deepened, fueled by her spiritual beliefs and moral principles. This gives her the strength to face life's challenges. In high school, KCI met Richard, and they were initially attracted to each other. However, as they dated, Richard noticed KCI's jealous and possessive tendencies. Her insecurity sometimes led to hurtful words and actions. Nevertheless, Richard remained patient and calm, and they eventually married after completing their studies. Over time, KCI's mother moved to Florida. Sarah and Brandy soon followed. Due to KCI's close relationship with her family, she and Richard relocated to Florida in 2009. After settling in, KCI worked occasionally as a transporter and sometimes as a dog groomer. She also began learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this time, KC and Richard welcomed their first child, Cameron. KCI was devoted to Cameron's well-being and made it her top priority. A few years later, KC and Richard had their second child, Preston. The children grew in a happy environment filled with laughter and loving care. As KCI advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic. There, she met Michael, who was Delaporte's right-hand man. Michael and KCI got along well, but Delaporte and Sarah both suspect that there may be something more than mere friendship between them. Even though both of them have families, but Michael found himself attracted to KCI. This attraction affected his focus and performance at work. Michael tried his best to satisfy KCI's needs, and she reciprocated Michael's feelings, and as a result they began an affair. Sarah and Michael decided to get a divorce, as did KCI and her spouse, Richard. After the divorce, Sarah was granted custody of her 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. In contrast, KCI and Richard chose to share custody of their children, Cameron and Preston, according to a certain rule. KCI took her parenting responsibilities seriously and made sure to transport the children as agreed. Delaporte's frustration increased as Michael's work performance at the clinic continued to deteriorate. To make matters worse, Michael inappropriately approached other employees, overstepping professional boundaries. A betrayal occurred when Michael asked for time off, claiming his mother had passed away, only to use the leave for a beach vacation. Delaporte discovered the truth and subsequently terminated Michael's employment. Seeking revenge, Michael burglarized the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a gun. Delaporte identified Michael as the perpetrator and contacted the authorities. With KCI's assistance, Michael escaped to New Mexico but was eventually caught by the police. After serving a short prison sentence, Michael was released. Despite Michael's past actions, KCI remained devoted to him. The couple moved in together, and Michael became a stepfather to Cameron and Preston. Eventually, in 2017, around Halloween, Michael and KCI got married, and started a new life together in a 2-bedroom trailer. Although the space is small, the affordable rent makes them feel grateful to have found a place where they can be together. In the same year, they welcomed their first child, Mercalli, followed by Ayana the next year. As their family grew to 4 children, Michael took on a job as a construction laborer to support them financially, while KCI dedicated herself to being a homemaker. She took great joy in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those special moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel where she shared milestones of their family life. At first glance, their life seemed perfect, with Michael appearing calm and KCI's laughter frequently punctuating their videos. However, their relationship was not as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the couple frequently argued, and their disagreements had become a persistent problem. KCI's distrust of Michael led her to regularly check his phone, and she became suspicious whenever Michael worked late hours. A heated argument broke out between them on the night of July 10, 2019, while their children slept. The argument started when KCI discovered a message on Michael's phone that made her believe he was being adultery. The confrontation quickly turned violent, with KCI grabbing a baseball bat and pushing Michael. Michael then took the bat from her and, in a state of blind fury, he repeatedly struck her until she died. Michael put KCI's body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet. He tried to clean up the scene as much as he could. The next morning, he took steps to prevent the children from finding out what happened. He then put KCI's body in his car. To avoid raising suspicion, Michael continued to post on KCI's social media accounts in the following days. On July 26, Michael sent a text to Richard, pretending to be KCI, asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. Michael also texted KCI's mother, asking her to care for Mercalli and Ayana. When Richard arrived to pick up Preston and Cameron, he found it strange that KCI was not there and expressed his concerns to Michael. However, Michael dismissed Richard's concerns, saying KCI had left town for a few days. KCI's mother had a similar reaction when she came to pick up Mercalli and Ayana. Later that day, Michael called Sarah and told her that he and KCI were separating, and he needed to take care of the children while she worked. He then picked up the children and took them to his home. During the drive, the children noticed a strong, unpleasant smell in the car, similar to rotting meat. Michael continued to visit his children at Sarah's residence for 2 weeks, driving back and forth between his home and Sarah. Meanwhile, the body of KCI remained hidden in his car. As the days went by without hearing from her daughter, KCI's mother grew increasingly worried. On August 10, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael. This time, KCI's absence was even more noticeable, and it increased Michael's concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for causing Richard and KCI to divorce, and acknowledged the challenges Richard went through in his relationship with KCI. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and KCI would likely raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. This realization led to a tragic turn of events. On a night that remains unspecified, Michael took Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same to Preston, putting his body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the owner of the trailer park where Michael lived served him an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate the premises. Amidst this dire situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayana. When KCI's mother saw Michael again without KCI, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was consumed by a single question: where was her daughter? Michael was driving with his daughters, Mercalli and Ayana, when he was suddenly overcome with guilt. He felt trapped and decided to turn himself in at the police station. However, when he reached the door, he changed his mind and turned back home. Upon returning, he filled the bathtub with water and tragically drowned his daughters. After their deaths, He placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached Florida in early September, a state of emergency was declared, prompting many people to seek shelter. Michael took advantage of the chaos to transport 5 bodies, including his wife and children. He loaded them into his truck and headed north to stay with Sarah. During his stay, Sarah noticed that Michael never contacted KCI or inquired about the children, which made her uneasy. However, she chose not to ask questions due to her awareness of the marital issues. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a strong, unpleasant smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. The owner checked the trailer, first looking through the windows and then entering it. Although the furniture and personal belongings were still there, the smell was overwhelming, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. KCI's mother grew desperate as she tried to make sense of her daughter's disappearance. She suspected Michael might be in trouble with the law and hiding, which could explain why her daughter was also in hiding for her own safety. Rather than waiting, KCI's mother contacted the sheriff's office and requested a welfare check at Michael's house. When officers arrived for the welfare check, they found the house empty but appeared to have been recently cleaned. However, a strong smell of decomposition lingered, contradicting the presence of cleaning supplies near the entrance. Before the officers could investigate further, the property owner arrived and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, with the bodies still in his vehicle, Michael drove out of state into Georgia. He stopped near a wooded area and disposed of the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. As he continued driving and checked his GPS, Michael lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Although Michael escaped without injury, the vehicle was severely damaged. The police quickly arrived at the scene of the accident and were immediately hit with the strong, terrible odor coming from the wrecked truck. They find a suitcase in Michael's truck, and when they open it, they discovered KCI's gruesome body. Michael broke down and confessed to his heinous crimes on the roadside. He also revealed the location of the children, leading to his immediate arrest. KCI's family was devastated by the news, feeling as though their world had shattered. In shock and grief, they still do not understand why Michael could have so brutally murdered his wife and children. Sarah, in particular, felt an intense hatred towards Michael, a sentiment she had never experienced before. With a search warrant and new evidence in hand, investigators went back to KCI's house. Upon entering, they were met with a strong, unpleasant odor and a noticeable reddish stain on the carpet. The agents began collecting evidence from the scene, while the autopsies were being performed to gather more information about the tragic incident. Forensic results showed that Cameron sustained a fractured jaw with no other visible signs of trauma. But a towel was in his mouth. Preston was found with a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found in a small plastic bag together, which also contained a baby bottle with Ayanna's name on it and a pair of pink sandals. The cause of death for Mercalli and Ayanna was determined to be drowning. KCI's autopsy results showed a severe blunt force injury to the front of her skull and face, but no other signs of trauma were found on her body. When questioned by authorities, Michael remained calm and provided precise and honest answers. Michael even thanked the police officers who arrested him and said he felt he had no other choice. Michael provided a clear and chronological account of incident from the fight with KCI to his subsequent arrest. When asked about his motives, Michael said that his actions stemmed from the harsh life circumstances he endured, which led him to believe that his decision was the only possible solution. The tragedy profoundly affected everyone involved, but it was particularly shattering for Sarah. She found it extremely difficult to accept that her children had been exposed to and had lived with someone like Michael. As a result, Sarah struggled with mental health issues after learning the truth. Michael was subsequently charged with second-degree murder for KCI's death and 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. Michael pleaded guilty to the charges, bypassing a trial and moving directly to the sentencing phase. A 12-person jury then had to decide between two sentences: life imprisonment or the death penalty. The defense strategy focused on Michael's difficult childhood and mental health issues, highlighting various psychological disorders that may justify a reduced sentence. However, state prosecutors argued that the extreme brutality of the case worthy a death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as required by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge formally sentenced Michael to death. He also received a separate sentence of life imprisonment without parole for the murder of KCI. Michael's lawyer quickly filed an appeal following the sentencing. However, on April 28, 2023, the judge rejected the appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors were pleased that justice had been achieved for KCI's family. Michael is still in prison, awaiting his scheduled execution. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Kate Waring. Kate Waring was born in Charleston, South Carolina, USA. She grew up in a loving family with 2 siblings, and her parents always tried their best to give their children the best life possible. As a child, Kate showed a deep love and compassion for animals, which led her to start volunteering at various animal shelters at a young age. As a teenager, she was a dancer and had a wide social circle, known for her positive attitude and outlook on life. Everyone assumed she had an educational good background, and to some extent, this was true. However, one fateful day, her life changed completely. Just before going to college, Kate opened up to her parents about being abused by someone close to the family when she was younger. Kate's parents were shocked by this confession. They felt guilty for not knowing the hardships their daughter had faced over the years. After learning this heartbreaking truth about their daughter, Kate's parents did everything they could to help her overcome it, but unfortunately, this traumatic experience left behind long-lasting consequences that became increasingly serious over time. Kate had struggled with addiction to both alcohol and illegal substances. Kate's parents recommended therapy to help her work through her issues, and she agreed to give it a try. They also suggested she move back in with them, thinking the family environment would aid in her recovery. Initially, the therapy seemed effective, but Kate continued to grapple with the emotional weight of her past, making it difficult for her to move forward. Kate's life underwent a major transformation when her psychiatrist diagnosed her with depression. Her father proposed a trip to anywhere in the world, which Kate eagerly accepted. She chose to travel to the Arctic Circle, driven by her long-held desire to see polar bears. Kate and her parents searched for suitable tours and eventually booked a trip. As the journey approached, Kate's parents noticed a marked change in her attitude, shifting from sadness to cheerful and positive. During the trip, Kate and her parents shared a wonderful experience, filled with joy and laughter. On the boat to the Arctic Circle, Kate met a fellow Russian tourist. They kept in touch throughout the trip, and when the trip ended, they still exchanged letters. Kate developed strong feelings for him, and eventually, which led her to make the decision to travel to Russia. Kate had finally begun to overcome her depression after traveling with her family in another country. However, due to visa issues, she was forced to return home. Despite this incident, Kate seems to have found joy in her life again. She planned to resolve her visa problems and had even started writing a book for her children. But everything changed on Saturday, June 12, 2009. Kate's family was away on a business trip, and she was alone at home. Normally, Kate would call her father to check in, but this time she didn't. Her father tried to reach her, but there was no answer. Concerned about her well-being, especially given her past struggles with addiction, her father asked someone to check on her. When the person arrived at Kate's home, they found her room empty, but the light was still on, suggesting that she had just stepped out and would return soon. However, Kate's medication, which she needed to take regularly, was still at home. Her parents were anxious, but they decided not to panic, thinking that Kate, being 28 years old, was capable of taking care of herself. They decided to wait until Monday, at which point parents intended to contact the police. On Monday morning, Kate's father received a call from the bank. A bank employee informed him that someone had tried to cash a check for over $4,000 from Kate's account. The bank was unable to contact Kate, so they reached out to her father. This situation raised suspicions, as Kate's father knew she only had a few $100s in her account. The bank security team contacted Kate's father due to the large amount of the check. Although Kate's signature on the check appeared to be genuine, the bank still had concerns. The man who tried to cash the check was identified as Ethan Mack. Kate's father did not recognize Ethan's name, but he assumed Ethan might be an acquaintance of Kate's since the bank had verified her signature. As Kate was still unreachable, her father decided to contact the police. The police launched an investigation into Kate's disappearance and began by questioning Ethan Mack. Ethan claimed to have known Kate for years and stated that she had written the check to pay off old debts. He also claimed that he had frequently lent Kate money for various purchases, including clothing and jewelry. Investigations into Kate's disappearance led detectives to speak with her friends. They revealed that Kate had a long-standing friendship with Ethan. Although they were very close, her friends insisted that the relationship was not love. Ethan told detectives that he met Kate on Friday night and took her out for dinner at a restaurant. After dinner, he drove her home and then went about his own business. To support his alibi, Ethan showed detectives text messages he had exchanged with Kate, confirming their dinner plans. He also allowed detectives to search his home, where he lived with his mother, but nothing suspicious was found. However, the police still suspect his connection with the check and did not rule Ethan out as list of suspects. Detectives reconstructed Kate's activities on Friday night to determine her last whereabouts before she disappeared. She had seen her therapist in the afternoon and then visited the gym. Later, Kate entered a store and purchased a bottle of wine. Security footage showed her talking on the phone at the time, and it is possible that she was speaking with Ethan, who later picked her up and took her to dinner. Kate's parents remembered another unsettling detail from the day she went missing. Although she mentioned having some problems, she didn't specify what they were. Unfortunately, her parents did not remember this conversation until a few days later, and by then, the information was too late to be of any help in the search. As the weeks went by, Kate remained missing. Her parents felt frustrated with the police, believing they weren't doing enough to find Kate. However, in August, the case gained new information when a team of former police officers, led by lawyer Andy Savage, took it on. This team had been privately investigating unsolved cases and was particularly drawn to Kate's. The team consisted of 5 individuals, and all have significant experience in the investigative field. One of them, former Detective James Randall, began by examining Kate's bedroom. He noticed 2 suspicious things. Firstly, he found a packet of medication that Kate took regularly. Kate's parents confirmed that she was very diligent in taking her medication, so the fact that the packet was left behind was highly alarming. Next, a team member found Chinese currency on Kate's bed, which raised questions since Kate's parents had no idea where she got it or why she needed it. To gather more information, the team brought in Bobby Mitter, an expert in tracking individuals online. His skills are really useful. Bobby discovered that on the night Kate disappeared, she called her friend James around 10 p.m., but he didn't answer. Kate left a disturbing voicemail, saying someone had stolen her credit cards. Kate's phone was last active at 1:53 a.m., for some unknown reason, when she called her own voicemail. Further investigation by member Lewis revealed that the call was made from James Island, just a few kilometers from Kate's house. Another team member, Eugene Fraser, spoke with acquaintances on James Island and found something suspicious. Ethan Mack, who had allowed police to search his mother's home, didn't actually live there. Instead, he rented an apartment in a nearby building. Eugene's acquaintance, who happened to be Ethan's landlord, provided this crucial information. The detectives dug deeper and discovered that the police had not Ethan thoroughly investigated. They had only done a cursory search of his mother's house. The team decided to take matters into their own hands and began their own investigation. In the process, they found out that Ethan had a girlfriend named Heather Camp. When they asked Kate's parents about Heather, her mother remembered a strange encounter. About a month before Kate's disappearance, Kate had met Heather on a train from Washington, D.C., where Kate was experiencing visa issues to Russia. Heather had told Kate that she had been robbed of her wallet and was now destitute. Kate offered to help and lent her a substantial amount of money. Heather said she has found a job as a pediatric surgeon in South Carolina and will start work soon. Heather later said that her daughter had tragically died in a car accident in New Jersey. Her actions following this announcement seemed irrational and confusing. She did not go there, and her demeanor suggested that her daughter's death did not affect her greatly. Furthermore, they discovered that Heather was facing fraud charges in Indiana. She had impersonated a licensed physician by falsifying paperwork. The team gathered significant data, forcing them to re-examine the case from a new perspective. However, when they presented their findings to the police were completely reluctant to continue the investigation. The team discovered that the only way to get the police to take action was to gather undeniable proof that connected Heather to Kate's disappearance. To obtain this evidence, the team took drastic measures. They convinced the person who rented an apartment to Ethan Mack to install a hidden camera outside his apartment door. Additionally, they placed a GPS tracker in Ethan's car, allowing them to monitor his movements. Their efforts soon paid off. After analyzing Ethan's travel patterns, the detectives discovered that he had visited multiple pawn shops throughout the city. They followed his trail and found that at each shop, Ethan was selling small batches of jewelry. Although they couldn't confirm whether the jewelry belonged to Kate, the detectives felt they were closing in on a crucial lead. The group then hits a major roadblock when Ethan and Heather's landlord threatens to evict them because they haven't paid their rent. This made the detectives' investigation difficult, as losing access to the apartment would hinder their ability to monitor Ethan and Heather's activities. To address this issue, the detectives devised a plan to persuade the landlord to grant Ethan and Heather an extension on their rent payment. In exchange, the landlord required both Ethan and Heather to sign a contract committing to pay the outstanding debt. The team successfully negotiated this arrangement, and once the contract was signed, they immediately sent it to the laboratory for analysis. The primary objective was to compare the handwriting on the contract with Kate's signature on the $4,000 check. The results yielded a significant breakthrough. The handwriting expert confirmed, with absolute certainty, that the signature on the check matched Heather's handwriting on the contract. The team discovered that Heather had forged Kate's signature. However, they knew the police would be uncooperative, so they devised a new plan. They convinced the landlord to help them by telling Ethan that the apartment needed insect treatment. The team leader, dressed as an exterminator, accompanied the landlord to the apartment. But their plan almost failed. They realized Ethan only moved the car away from the house and did not actually leave. Upon entering the apartment, the investigator and the landlord were met with an unexpected surprise. Ethan was still at home, and Heather was the one driving his car. The investigator then had to think quickly and adjust his plan. They insist that the apartment needs to be disinfected and ask Ethan to wait outside while they spray the dangerous disinfectant. Ethan, unaware of the investigation, agreed to leave his apartment. Meanwhile, investigators begin searching for evidence to prove Ethan's involvement in Kate's disappearance. They found Ethan's backpack and examined its contents. Discovering Chinese money, it resembles the bills found on Kate's bed. However, the search yielded no other significant clues. The investigator and the landlord pretended to complete their task and left. The team needed a new strategy. After reviewing the footage from the camera outside Ethan's apartment, they noticed a man frequently entering the building, Terry Williams, a neighbor of the couple. The detectives suspected that Terry might have information about Ethan and Heather's involvement in Kate's disappearance. The team decided to take a risk and offered Terry a substantial sum of money in exchange for his cooperation. They visited Terry's apartment with the offer, hoping he would reveal what he knew about Kate's disappearance. Detectives encountered an unexpected situation when they told Terry what was happening. Unbeknownst to them, Heather was at her home and overheard the conversation between the detectives and Terry. When the detectives started talking to Terry, Heather was extremely frightened. She immediately called Ethan and explained the situation in a hysterical state. The investigation team did not expect this, and they spent the next few days coming up with another plan. However, Terry later contacted the detectives and invited them to his home to discuss. Upon arriving at Terry's apartment, he reveals that although Ethan and Heather did not directly tell him about their involvement in Kate's disappearance, but he had suspected that the couple had done something wrong to Kate. Terry then produced an iPod that Heather had given him shortly after Kate's disappearance. He had assumed the iPod belonged to Kate. The detectives examined the device and, using its serial number, confirmed that it indeed belonged to Kate. This discovery provided the investigation team with sufficient evidence to return to the police department. The local police could no longer ignore the case and decided to take action. After reviewing the evidence gathered by the team, they arrested Ethan and Heather. During the initial interrogation, Heather agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. She claimed Kate's body was on Wat Allah Island, approximately 20 miles from her house. However, when the police searched the area, they found no of Kate's body. It became clear that Heather had given them false information. Andy Savage then tried a different approach, suspecting Heather's direct involvement in Kate's murder. He met with her and offered a deal. In exchange for revealing Kate's body location, he would help get her off the forgery charges papers. Heather, seeing this as her only chance, agreed to the deal. She provided a detailed description of the location on the outskirts of Wat Allah Island, claiming Kate's body was still there. The detectives decided to search the area without police accompaniment, but they were initially disappointed when they found nothing. However, they returned the next day, and they eventually discovered Kate's body. The forensic doctors were unable to determine the cause of Kate's death. But the truth eventually came to light when Heather began to confess. In August 2009, Heather signed a confession admitting to murder, obstruction of justice, and bank check forgery. The police investigation revealed that Heather had been committing fraud for years and had targeted Kate as her next victim during a trip from Washington. Heather later met Ethan and started a romantic relationship with him. Ethan, however, did not immediately plead guilty, and his trial began in October 2010. The prosecution used Heather's testimony to reconstruct the incident surrounding Kate's disappearance. According to Heather's account, on the day Kate vanished, Kate discovered that Heather had deceived her and stolen her credit cards. Kate threatened to inform her father. Heather confided in Ethan, who chose to support her despite his long-standing friendship with Kate. The investigation revealed that Kate was not alone with Ethan on the night she disappeared. Heather was also present. It appears that Heather and Ethan attempted to negotiate with Kate at a restaurant, trying to persuade Kate not to expose Heather's deception. During this meeting, Heather may have promised Kate that when she got to Ethan's apartment, Heather would return the stolen credit card to her. Upon Kate's arrival, Heather and Ethan may have been waiting for the right moment to end her life. However, the court ultimately questioned Heather's account of the incident and found her guilty, sentencing her to 39 years in prison. Ethan received a slightly more lenient sentence of 25 years. Welcome back, detectives. let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Soni Millbrook. Soni Millbrook was born on February 15, 1981, in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. She is the daughter of Christine Millbrook Bennett and grew up in a large family with many siblings, having 2 sisters and 3 brothers. This warm and close-knit environment helped her build a special relationship with her cousin Jenny during her teenage years. Soni became a popular student at her high school. In 1998, when she was 17 years old and in the 11th grade, she met a man named Lakeith Moody, who was older than her. She soon began a relationship with him. However, the relationship was not a happy one, as Lakeith was abusive and violent, leaving visible injuries on Soni's body. Despite this, they had 4 children, 3 girls and a boy named after his father. In 1999, Soni's mother discovered a bruise on Soni's chest. When her mother asked her about it, Soni cried and confessed that Lakeith had caused the injury. A friend of Soni's also witnessed the injury, but Soni refused to report Lakeith's behavior to the police. Lakeith often controlled Soni and tried to isolate her from her friends and family. That same year, Soni moved into an apartment in the Fraser neighborhood of Memphis. One day, the management informed her of an incident at her apartment. When she arrived, she found a chaotic scene: damaged furniture, missing clothes, a destroyed television, food smeared on the walls, and personal hygiene products scattered everywhere, including under the stairs. Strangely, the mirror had the words, "Kiki loves you," with Kiki being Lakeith's nickname. Lakeith's behavior made Soni's relatives even more concerned. On October 31, 2000, Soni and her cousin, Pamela, went to a bar called The Mirage with Lakeith. While at the bar, Lakeith became aggressive towards Soni by slapping her and throwing a drink in her face. After the incident, Soni and Pamela left the bar and got into their car. According to Pamela, Soni was shaken and frightened by Lakeith's actions. Soni asked Pamela to take her home immediately because she was afraid that Lakeith would come after them. When Soni got home, she locked the door securely. An hour later, Lakeith came to the house, yelling and banging on the door. Pamela had to threaten to call the police to make Lakeith leave. Once Soni calmed down, her cousin decided to leave her alone. However, that evening, Pamela received a call informing her that Soni had been hospitalized. Lakeith had forced his way into the house, and when Soni tried to end the relationship, he attacked her. He tore off Soni's clothes and hit her on the head, face, chest, arms, and between her thighs. She suffered bruises all over her body, loose teeth, and even lost consciousness because Lakeith choked her until she passed out. Lakeith later accidentally discovered that Soni was on birth control pills, and he attacked her again. The next morning, Soni called Pamela and asked her cousin to take her to the hospital because of serious health problems. In late 2008, Soni, then 27, worked at a Christian institute. She was considered a reliable and punctual employee. Therefore, when she took time off or missed work, it was usually due to important reasons. Once, she called her supervisor to report that she could not come to work because her face was badly bruised, and she did not want the children to see it. After she asked for a day off, Director Leslie approved it. However, when Soni returned a few days later, the bruises were so obvious that the director allowed her to wear sunglasses while working at the academy. Lakeith's violence not only affected Soni and their children but also caused concern in the community. In April 2008, Lakeith was found sitting in an SUV with a gun in his hand, despite being previously prohibited from owning a gun due to a criminal record. Furthermore, he had previously served 2 years in prison for burglary and 3 years in prison for drug possession with intent to distribute. Soni tried to avoid her boyfriend, but it was almost impossible. The situation came to a head on October 6, 2008. At that time, Sony did not arrive at the academy by 5 p.m. Her sister received a text message from Sony saying that Lakeith was holding her hostage in his home and had been beating her all day. Sony also provided her home address. Sony's sister called the police. 2 officers went to Sony's house. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer since it was locked from the inside. They then called the security department to unlock the door. When the police entered the house, they saw Sony's boyfriend jumping out of the back window of the apartment. Sony stood in the hallway, crying and unable to speak because of her grief. Her 4 children were also present, making for a very heartbreaking scene. Sony's face and neck were covered in bruises and scratches. When she calmed down, Sony explained what had happened. Sony and Lakeith began arguing, and he refused to let her leave the house. She told the police that Lakeith would not let her or the children near the window. She also said that Lakeith injured one of their children by grabbing the child and preventing her from taking the child to the hospital. Sony said that her boyfriend had been both physically and verbally abusive. During one altercation, he tied a baby blanket around her neck and choked her until she lost consciousness. When the police arrived, Lakeith threatened to choke her again and said he would kill her if the police did not let him go. The police searched the area but did not find Lakeith. Sony then left the house with the children in her car. 3 days later, she filed a restraining order against Lakeith, fearing for her life and wanting to prevent any contact with him. However, she missed the hearing, and the protective order was never granted. Nearly 6 months later, on March 10, 2009, Sony was still in contact with Lakeith. That day, he was supposed to pick up the children for a doctor's appointment, but instead, he began arguing with Sony, accusing her of having a new boyfriend. The argument quickly turned violent as he slapped her and pulled her hair. She tried to break free and ran out of the apartment while Lakeith screamed and threatened to kill her. Lakeith did not catch Sony but instead kidnapped their youngest child, an infant, and drove away at high speed. A police patrol alerted to the domestic disturbance arrived as Lakeith was running away. The officers attempted to stop him, but he escaped. In early 2010, Sony, 28, was studying at Southeast Tennessee Community College. She had to stay home to care for her 5th child, who was 9 weeks old, because of poor health. In January, Sony and the children moved into the Budget Lodge in Memphis. However, on the first day Sony moved in, she and Lakeith's arguments became so loud that motel staff had to intervene because they were disturbing other guests. Sony and Lakeith could not maintain a peaceful relationship. They argued constantly, disturbing neighbors and management with the noise. On January 22, a hotel security guard witnessed Lakeith in a very agitated state. He arrived at a high rate of speed in Sony's car and then began yelling at her as she stood on the second-floor balcony with the children. In his anger, he threw a bag of groceries at her. The security guard arrived and told Lakeith not to make any noise or throw things in the hotel. Lakeith was instructed to settle the argument in his room. However, Lakeith told the security guard that he did not need to worry about it. Lakeith then locked his car and accompanied the security guard to an unoccupied room on the 3rd floor. The security guard asked Lakeith to hand over any hotel keys he had. Surprisingly, Lakeith had keys to 3 different rooms, even though he was not registered as a guest. The next day, Lakeith and Sony moved into room 222 with their children. However, the night manager asked Lakeith to leave that evening. Although Lakeith left as requested, he soon returned. The arguments between Sony and Lakeith continued for several more days until the guard asked Lakeith to leave the hotel for good. As Lakeith left, the front desk clerk tried to calm him down. The guard also warned Lakeith not to come back that night. Lakeith got into her car and drove away. Some time later, Sony spoke to Pamela and confided that she was having problems in her life. She was staying at the motel and wanted to talk to Pamela about something important. Sony said that she would call if she left the motel or if her boyfriend left first. The next day started normally. At 7 a.m., Sony took the younger children to daycare and the older children to school. Around 11 a.m., the housekeeping manager knocked on Sony's door and spoke to her through the window to inform her that they needed to pay the rent or they would have to leave. The manager returned several times that day. On a visit around 2:30 p.m., Lakeith answered the door. The room was dark. Lakeith told the manager that his mother was on her way to pick up the money. On January 27th, Sony did not pick up her older daughter on time. So the school secretary called the child's grandmother, Christine, to ask her to come pick up the girl. When Christine tried to contact Sony, she received no response. At around 6 p.m., she discovered that her other grandchildren were still at daycare. Concerned that she could not reach Sony, Christine asked her husband to pick up the younger children from daycare while she went to the school to find out what was wrong. They contacted the police and reported the incident at approximately 10:30 p.m. Later, on January 28th, the housekeeping manager re-entered room 222 and began taking inventory of the items that Sony and Lakeith had left behind. The room was filled with clothing in a large trash bag, which was then taken to a storage area. After the room was cleaned, it was ready for new guests. On January 29th, James and Rhonda Sargent moved into the room. They quickly noticed a foul odor and attempted to block it with incense, but were unable to eliminate it completely. They also discovered that previous tenants had attempted the same, as they found scented tissues in the tiles and ceiling vents. Because the smell was so strong that they reported it. On January 29th, officers from the Memphis Police Department's Missing Persons Unit visited the hotel to inquire about Sony's whereabouts, as that was where she was last seen. However, they did not enter room 222. Lakeith was arrested on February 2nd, around 7 p.m., while inside Sony's car at a shopping center. He was held for 48 hours on a charge of car theft. During questioning about Sony's disappearance, Lakeith said he last saw her on January 26th. He explained they had met in the hotel parking lot that morning after Sony had dropped off her children at school. They went into the room, had sex, and then returned outside. Lakeith then took Sony's car keys and left the hotel. He claimed Sony planned to use her welfare and student loan money to buy a new car, so he wasn't worried about keeping her car. Lakeith also said he had been living in the car since January 26th. However, investigators discovered that Lakeith had actually been staying at a different hotel. Additionally, given the snowy weather during that time, it was unlikely that he had spent the night in the car. On February 3rd, police found a debit card with Sony's name on it and several recent purchase receipts inside the car. That same day, police also searched the clothes stored at the hotel for DNA or other evidence, but found nothing. Due to the lack of evidence linking Lakeith to Sony's disappearance, he was released. Sony's cousin and her mother had to undertake the painful task of going to the hotel where Sony was staying to collect her belongings. At that time, Sony's cousin had a bad feeling but did not find any evidence. On February 4th, the police went to Sony's cousin's house and found a DVD player in Sony's wallet. Sony's cousin said they had received the items from Moody. According to the cousin, Lakeith borrowed the DVD player on January 24th under the pretext of watching a movie and drove a red car that day. When he saw Lakeith again a few days later, the cousin asked why Lakeith did not pick up the children on January 27th. But Lakeith evaded the question. When the cousin asked about Sony's whereabouts, Lakeith left the DVD player and wallet behind and left. Around that time, guests James and Rhonda Sargent requested to be moved out of room 222 because of the persistent odor. Since there were no other rooms available, they moved to another hotel. Later guests in room 222 also complained of a foul odor, despite the room being cleaned several times and the carpets being cleaned in early February. The odor persisted, only easing slightly over several days. On February 4th, homicide detectives arrived at the hotel to investigate. By this time, room 222 had been occupied and cleaned at least 3 times. As a result, the detectives were unable to enter the room to collect evidence. Instead, they asked hotel staff if they had noticed anything unusual. All staff responded that nothing was unusual. Then, on February 7th, James and Rhonda returned to the hotel and changed rooms 3 times. During one of the changes, they spent the night in room 222. While there, they informed management that the room still smelled unpleasant. To address this issue, in March, the hotel performed a more thorough cleaning of room 222. The staff cleaned the carpet, bedding, shower curtains, and window blinds. However, the results were shocking. The odor not only remained but became even more intense. The manager discussed the issue with the security guard. During the conversation, they recalled that the previous tenant, Sony, had disappeared at the end of January. The security guard recalled the events that occurred at that time and suggested that the manager check room 222 for traces of blood or cleaning agents. 10 minutes later, the manager returned and asked the guard to accompany him. What they found was horrifying. The 2 men entered the room where the manager had removed the mattress from one of the beds, leaving only the bed frame. The bottom of the bed frame had a cover. When they lifted the box spring, they discovered a large gap where anything could be hidden from view. Looking through the sturdy edges of the bed frame, they saw the unthinkable, a decomposing body. They called the police, who arrived at the scene shortly after. The bed frame was found to have many marks on it, and there were 2 pieces of broken wood near the headboard. A towel and a cloth bag were found between the legs of the body. The victim was wearing a shirt but nothing below the waist. The forensic team's autopsy determined that the cause of death was strangulation with a coaxial cable. The cable was wrapped around the neck, under one arm, around the chest, and ended behind the back. The medical examiner concluded that it would take at least 2 to 3 minutes of sustained pressure to cause death. In order to find the killer, the police collected items from between the victim's legs for analysis. The victim's shirt had an unidentified fingerprint. In addition, the scarf and the cloth bag did not belong to the victim. DNA samples that matched Sony's genetic profile, as well as that of a woman, were discovered. More remarkably, male DNA was also found on the cable, which led to the hypothesis that Sony had died at the time she was reported missing. The coaxial cable used in the case may have come from a DVD player that Lakeith borrowed from her cousin. Lakeith had been arrested by police for illegal possession of a weapon, and he was also the last person seen with Sony alive, making him a suspect in the case. He was in Sony's car when he was arrested and taken to the Mason detention facility. On March 18th, authorities launched an investigation into why the case unfolded in such a strange way. The chief of police said the victim's family deserved an explanation and acknowledged that the circumstances of the case were unprecedented, making it a shocking case of domestic violence. He also regretted that the room where Sony died had been cleaned and rented out multiple times, making it difficult for police to collect evidence. However, this explanation was met with skepticism. One of the first tenants, Rhonda, said the police should have been allowed into the room when James and Rhonda visited in January and would have found Sony sooner if they had noticed the smell of a decomposing body. Rhonda believes the police were slow in finding Sony. Following the loss, Sony's family held a funeral for her on March 24th. Sony's children were placed in the care of her sister on April 1st. They are currently trying to gain legal custody of the children. Sony's sister said that although the children were the primary victims, everyone in the family's lives was turned upside down by the loss. She pledged to take care of Sony's children, making sure they had enough food, clothes, and toys, and to keep them together as a family. She also said Sony had benefited from a social program, and she would continue to care for the children as her sister had. The card had been loaded with money before Sony went missing because she received an income tax refund. Police tracked the card's activity and found that it was in Lakeith's possession. During the surveillance, they noticed that the card was used on February 1st at a convenience store Sony usually visited to withdraw cash using her electronic welfare transfer card. Notably, this occurred 4 days after Sony went missing. Officers went to the store and requested the owner to show them the footage from their 16 security cameras. Through the footage, they observed that on the morning of February 1st, at 11:38 a.m., a man dressed in yellow conducted a transaction at the store. He used a Sony card to buy a bottle of orange juice, withdrew cash, and purchased a cigar. After making these purchases, he returned to a car driven by someone else. With all the evidence against him, Lakeith's trial began in the first week of February 2014, more than 4 years after the crime. By then, the Budget Lodge Hotel involved in the crime had closed. Lakeith did not admit his guilt. During the trial, the prosecutor portrayed the case as the tragic end of a tumultuous relationship. In contrast, Lakeith's defense attorney argued that there was insufficient evidence to establish his client's guilt. He pointed out that there were no witnesses or physical evidence to prove Lakeith's crime. The attorney also noted that the police found fingerprints on the victim's bed frame, but those fingerprints did not match Lakeith's. This suggests that someone else may have been involved in the crime. Additionally, the attorney argued that there was reason to suspect that the victim had had relationships with several other men over the years. He also emphasized that his client had never been convicted of domestic violence against the victim. Furthermore, he revealed something that the public did not know. Sony moved in with Lakeith again because she had to leave a relative's home due to a rat infestation. On February 6th, video footage showing Lakeith using a Sony prepaid card 4 days after her death was presented to the court. The defense claimed his calm demeanor throughout the transaction demonstrated his innocence, while the prosecution saw it as evidence of a cold and ruthless man with no regard for the crimes he was accused of committing. On February 7, 2014, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. On February 10th, he appealed the conviction, arguing that the court had erred in considering his past acts of domestic violence and that the evidence was insufficient. On July 7, 2015, the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the convictions, affirming the decision. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Lee. Annie Lee was born on July 3, 1985, in San Jose, California, to Vivian Van Lee and Hogan Lee, Vietnamese immigrants. As an only child, Annie demonstrated exceptional intelligence and talent from an early age, consistently excelling in her studies and being considered the top student in her school. Annie's favorite subjects were chemistry and biology. Her teachers believed she had a bright future in science, with some even predicting she might one day win a Nobel Prize. Throughout her school years, Annie actively participated in scientific conferences, where her work garnered various awards and recognition. As a high school student, she secured a $65,000 scholarship to study at any U.S. university. Annie chose the University of Rochester in New York, where she studied cellular development biology and medical anthropology. She later enrolled in Yale University's graduate school, working in a scientific laboratory and pursuing a doctoral degree in chemistry and biology. Annie's dissertation focused on the study of diseases caused by metabolic disorders. During her time working in the laboratory, she gained much research knowledge, which contributed to the treatment of diabetes and certain types of cancer. Annie, a student at the University of Rochester in New York, while pursuing her studies, met Jonathan Widowski, a fellow student and promising scientist. The two quickly dating, and their parents were pleased with their relationship. After graduating, Annie moved to New Haven, Connecticut, to attend Yale, while Jonathan chose to pursue his studies at Columbia University in New York. Despite the distance, the couple maintained their romance, visiting each other every weekend and making plans for their future. In the summer of 2009, Jonathan proposed to Annie with a beautiful diamond ring, and she happily accepted. They set their wedding date for Sunday, September 13, 2009. Initially, they only shared the news with their parents and close friends, keeping their colleagues in the dark. It wasn't until a week before the wedding, on September 6, that Annie sent out emails to friends and colleagues, announcing their upcoming marriage and a wedding invitation. The day after, the news spread rapidly throughout the department and the lab where Annie worked, becoming the most discussed topic. Annie and her fiancé had planned a wedding ceremony on Long Island, followed by a honeymoon at a luxurious resort in Greece. A few months before she went missing, Annie had written an article for the university publication, where she cautioned students about potential dangers and provided safety tips for when they were off campus. However, despite being aware of the risks, Annie herself fell victim to an unexpected tragedy at her workplace. On Tuesday, September 8, Annie left her university dormitory, where she shared a room with 3 friends, and headed to the University Medical Center laboratory, where she worked. The laboratory building, located on Amistad Street, has restricted access and requires a pass and special key card for entry and movement within the premises. A CCTV camera at the entrance captured Annie entering the building around 10 o'clock that morning. She went to her office, changed her clothes, stored her personal belongings, put on a medical coat, locked the door, and proceeded to the biolab. However, Annie never returned to her office that day and seemed to vanish in the corridors. Unfortunately, no one ever saw her alive again. On the evening Annie went missing, her dormitory neighbors were the first to discover the incident. They had grown accustomed to Annie's punctual nature, as she usually returned home at the same time every day. However, as midnight approached and she failed to return, her friends began to worry. Their concerns deepened when they were unable to reach Annie on her phone. Deciding to take action, they reported her disappearance to the police. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Annie's parents and fiancé had also been unable to contact her that night. Initially, they had assumed she was working late due to her heavy workload and would call them back when she was available. When the police arrived, they weren't too worried. They had heard what had happened and assumed that Annie was nervous before the wedding and needed time to calm down. However, their opinion quickly changed after examining Annie's office and reviewing the CCTV footage. They also tracked her movements within the building using her key card. The evidence revealed that Annie had entered the building in the morning but never exited. Her personal belongings, including her clothes, bag, wallet, and cell phone, were still in her office. Despite an extensive search, no sign of Annie was found, leaving behind only the unsettling feeling that she had vanished into thin. The disappearance of Annie Lee, a graduate student, led to an extensive investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Those who knew Annie personally described her as intelligent, kind, cheerful, and energetic, with no known enemies. Her family and fiancé anxiously waited for news, hope she will return safely. However, detectives were less optimistic, concluding that it was likely she was no longer alive. The laboratory building, crime scene, was placed under guard, and the list of suspects was narrowed down to staff and students with authorized access. The university atmosphere was tense because everyone realized that the killer might be somewhere nearby. Annie's fiancé, Jonathan, who had flown in from another state, was questioned but had a solid alibi. Despite this, he was visibly shaken and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, deeply concerned about Annie's disappearance. Among the suspects, one is Annie's teacher. On the day she disappeared, He canceled his lectures for unknown reasons and had no alibi. Although his was initially questioned, after the police still believed the perpetrator was likely someone from Yale University's laboratory, either a student, faculty member, or staff. A disturbing detect was found on September 12, providing the first evidence that Annie was no longer alive. A medical coat stained with blood was discovered hidden behind a false ceiling in an auxiliary room of a building. The coat did not belong to Annie, but further examination revealed that the blood on it was indeed hers. On September 13, the body Annie was found in a narrow pipeline on the technical floor of the laboratory. The day she was supposed to get married and leave for her honeymoon in Greece. Her petite stature and fragile build made it easier for her killer to stuff her body into the small space. A service dog's keen sense of smell helped the police locate Annie's body. The location where her body was hidden suggested that the killer was familiar with the laboratory's layout. It was a spot that was hard to access, making it a clever yet sinister choice for concealing the crime. Annie's body showed severe signs of trauma. Most of her ribs were broken, her limbs were damaged, and several teeth were knocked out. However, according to the pathologists, the cause of death was mechanical asphyxia, which meant that Annie was severely beaten and then strangled. A further examination revealed that Annie's clothes had traces of seminal fluid. But it was concluded that she had not been raped. A few days before Annie's body was discovered, police attention was initially drawn to Raymond J. Clark III, a young laboratory technician. Raymond claimed to have seen Annie leave the building without her belongings, implying she intended to return. However, his testimony aroused suspicion from the police. Following the discovery of Annie's body, Raymond became the primary suspect. They collected DNA samples from Raymond and asked him not to leave the country until the investigation was completed. On September 17, Raymond was arrested. Forensic examination results showed that his semen was found on Annie's clothes. And his robe, stained with Annie's blood, was discovered hidden in the suspended ceiling. Additionally, Raymond had suspicious bruises on his body, suggesting that Annie had fiercely defended herself before her death. Despite the incriminating evidence, Raymond denied any involvement in the crime. Further investigation showed that Raymond was a very hot-tempered person, easily angered and often had workplace conflicts. He frequently engaged in verbal altercations with colleagues and had a reputation for being cruel, having physically abused women he had relationships with in the past. Raymond did not excel academically, but he stood out as a promising athlete in school. He is known for his handsome looks and has a strong appeal to women. However, he was unable to get into university due to poor grades. Fortunately, with the help of some relatives, Raymond secured a job at a laboratory, starting as a janitor and eventually working his way up to become a technician. During this time, Raymond was in a relationship with a woman named Jessica Del Rocco. However, their relationship was tumultuous, and Jessica later testified against Raymond in court. She described him as controlling, stating that he would constantly monitor her activities, read her messages, and dictate what she could do and couldn't do. He would also become violent when they disagreed. And Jessica claimed that he would physically abuse her. After one particularly brutal incident, Jessica fled from Raymond. She temporarily relocated to another state to escape his abuse. Then Raymond had been in a relationship with Jennifer Radko, a Yale University student, for the past year. Jennifer ignored rumors about his alleged infidelity with students and lab employees. She accepted his marriage proposal, and they proceeding with wedding preparations. The motive behind the murder remains unclear, even after he fully admitted his guilt. He never revealed his motive, even after admitting to the crime. Initially, it was thought that the murder was related to a workplace conflict. Annie was conducting experiments on laboratory mice to study the effectiveness of enzymes in treating cancer, diabetes, and other diseases. Raymond, who considered the laboratory his domain, was in charge of the mice. Two theories emerged about the incident leading to the murder. The first theory suggests that Raymond might have had a conflict with Annie. On the day of the murder, Annie stayed late in the laboratory and entered the area where experimental animals were kept. Raymond, who had cleaned the area, go in there too. The confrontation could have intensified into a physical altercation, which in turn could have led to Annie being strangled by their Raymond a fit of rage. A second theory proposes that Raymond had feelings for Annie, but she rejected his advances. Raymond, unaccustomed to rejection, was hurt by her refusal. When he learned about her upcoming wedding on September 7th, Raymond was completely overcome by intense feelings of jealousy. The next day, when he was alone with Annie in the laboratory, he attacked her, beating and attempting to rape her, then ultimately strangling her. This theory explains the appearance of seminal fluid on Annie's clothes. The case gained widespread media attention from the start. The victim was a promising young scientist, and the crime was committed on campus. Raymond first appeared in court in Connecticut on October 6, 2009, where he denied any involvement in the murder and the charges against him. The hearing was postponed multiple times to allow for the collection of all evidence and materials. It was discovered that Raymond had spent at least an hour with Annie in the laboratory, during which the murder took place. In an attempt to mislead investigators, Raymond used his key card over 50 times at various locations, eventually making his way to the technical floor. There, he spent around 15 minutes hiding the body in the wall. Raymond then activated the fire alarm, which forced the staff to evacuate the building, providing him with an opportunity to blend in and avoid suspicion. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in a pocket of a robe found hidden under a false ceiling, a green ballpoint pen. Further examination revealed that Raymond had used this pen to sign his name in various work logs on the same day. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Raymond scrubbing specific areas of the lab floor repeatedly over the next few days. Despite the floor appearing clean, he also disposed of the cleaning equipment and a pack of tissues with small brown stains, resembling blood splatters, in a trash can. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the tissues contained Annie's blood, indicating that Raymond had made a thorough attempt to eliminate any evidence. In February 2011, Clark agreed to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. At the court hearing on March 17, 2011, he pleaded guilty to murder and attempted rape and apologized to Tanny's parents and fiancé. However, Raymond never revealed the details of the incident leading up to the murder or his motivation for the crime. As a result, he was sentenced to 44 years in prison. Raymond is currently serving his sentence at the Cheshire Correctional Institution in New Haven County, Connecticut, and will not be eligible for release until September 2053. The parents and fiancé of Annie have expressed that they find the given sentence to be fair. At the sentencing, Annie's mother delivered a heartfelt speech. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that she would never get the opportunity to hold her daughter again, witness her marriage, hear her laughter, or enjoy the presence of her grandchildren. She said goodbye to her child, whom she cherished as the greatest gift from God. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. Growing up, Sophia had a happy and carefree childhood. She was a bright and energetic young girl. Sophia developed a close relationship with her siblings. They were from her mother Michelle's first marriage. When Sophia was around 6 or 7 years old, her parents went through a divorce. This event left a lasting impact on Sophia's emotional well-being, causing her significant emotional pain in the years that followed. Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a mental health condition marked by severe mood swings during her high school years. The condition affected her mood, behavior, and behavior. Although Sophia received treatment, including medication and therapy, there is no cure for the condition, which posed significant challenges for both her and her family. Bipolar disorder had a profound impact on Sophia's daily life, leading to unpredictable behavior and a chaotic lifestyle. Her relationships were often unstable and those around her struggled to cope with her condition. However, in 2015, Sophia met Austin, a charismatic and optimistic person who quickly captured her heart. Sophia and Austin had a volatile relationship due to Austin's aggression and anabolic steroid use for sports. They argued frequently, sometimes leading to physical fights. Sophia's mental health struggles often contributed to these conflicts. Austin's aggression left Sophia injured several times, requiring hospitalization. When Sophia discovered Austin's affair about a month before the incident, she decided to end the relationship, but they still saw each other occasionally. Sophia persevered through her struggles and continued to progress in life. As a young woman with striking features, she worked briefly as a model for a local company's jeans advertisements, which helped fund her education. Sophia eventually graduated as a licensed massage therapist and landed a job at the Red Door, a high-end spa in a luxury hotel. It was there that she met her 20-year-old coworker, Spencer Mugford. A beach lover and keen swimmer from Florida, Spencer was hired as a sailing instructor. Spencer and Sophia developed a strong connection due to their shared interests. They started dating, but their relationship was short-lived as their families did not approve of it, mainly because they were often surrounded by trouble. Michelle, Sophia's mother, was particularly concerned about her daughter's well-being as Sophia was frequently meeting Austin, an ex-boyfriend, and drinking alcohol, which had become a regular habit. In the end, Sophia's relationship with Spencer did not work out, and they decided to remain friends. The exact reason for their breakup is unclear, but it seems Sophia may have reunited with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of work. Spencer and Sophia had always been intrigued by the mysterious lighthouse and decided to visit it on the eve of Memorial Day. Their trip, however, ended in an unexplained event. On June 8, 2018, a commercial fishing vessel near the Long Island Strait made a disturbing discovery. The crew spotted something unusual in the water, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a corpse. The fishermen quickly alerted the Coast Guard, who then notified the police. When the police arrived, they recovered the body of a young man from the shoreline and observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body. The deceased was later identified as Spencer Mugford, who, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, had been reported missing just a few days earlier. To understand what led to Spencer's death, his body underwent an autopsy. The results confirmed that Spencer had drowned, and experts did not find any signs of violence or assault. However, some details from the autopsy were kept undisclosed. In the same week that Spencer and Sophia went missing, 2 other men went missing in the same area. Their bodies were later discovered, and like Spencer, they had drowned. Initially, police believed that these incidents were unfortunate accidents caused by adverse circumstances. Remarkably, despite an extensive search, Sophia McKenna's body has not been found. On the night of May 27, 2018, in the small town of Groton, Connecticut. Although the investigation is ongoing, the case remains unsolved, leaving many questions unanswered. The story revolves around Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford, who decide to hike to the New London Lighthouse, located along the Thames River in a location considered mystical by locals. Built in 1909, this historic lighthouse has become famous for claims of paranormal activity involving Ernie, the first lighthouse keeper. According to local legend, Ernie's grief led to his tragic death after he jumped from the roof of the lighthouse following a painful breakup. Since then, locals and visitors have reported many strange occurrences. Mysterious events have included doors and windows opening for no apparent, sheets falling off beds, and radios turning on for no reason. Sailors have also reported mysterious incidents, such as boats leaving the shore on their own. As a result, the lighthouse has become a place of paranormal stories. The following Saturday, Sophia's friend Austin tried to reach her, but his calls and messages went unanswered. Initially, Austin wasn't concerned, knowing Sophia often slept in late. As the hours passed with no response, he started to worry and contacted Sophia's mother, Michelle. Michelle hadn't checked her phone because her younger daughter had been playing with it since morning. When she finally checked, she found 7 missed calls from an unknown number. Michelle attempted to call the number back, only to reach Spencer's voicemail, suggesting that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle attempted to contact Sophia but was unsuccessful. She and Austin then began a search. Austin called nearby hospitals, while Michelle filed a report with the police about a missing person. They also reached out to Spencer's family, who were equally worried since he had missed a significant family event and was unresponsive to their calls and messages. Michelle and Austin visited Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had recently been there. The night before, Spencer's father learned that his son had met Sophia, which made him and his wife worried about the problems Sophia was having. Spencer's mother said that her son had planned to go fishing with a friend. The last time she spoke to Spencer was at 10 p.m. when her son said goodnight to her. Realizing that something was wrong, the Spencer family also reported their son and girlfriend missing to the police around 6:30 p.m. Police began searching for Sophia and Spencer. During the search, Austin contacted the sheriff to share some information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He also told the sheriff that he had seen a video that Sophia had posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, recorded on Spencer's phone, Sophia and Spencer can be seen having fun on a boat, heading towards the lighthouse. The footage shows a young man rowing towards the lighthouse. Everything seems normal. The photo taken before the incident shows Sophia posing playfully in front of the lighthouse with a concrete barrier and a "no passing" sign in the background. However, the events that unfolded just minutes after the photo was taken remain a complete mystery. Photos and videos were posted confirming that Sophia and Spencer were indeed at the lighthouse. This information prompted the police to dispatch 20 different Coast Guard units to the area. An extensive search was conducted by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police, including air, sea, and land searches. The police's first major discovery was Sophia's car parked on a university campus, with her cell phone found inside. That night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had been wearing in the video. Police theorized that Spencer may have used the T-shirt to secure a boat to shore. The search for Spencer and Sophia continued overnight and into the next day. However, a storm soon rolled in, prompting state authorities to temporarily halt the search until new information or clues about the Sophia and Spencer. This decision came as a shock to their families and friends, who refused to give up hope. They took matters into their own hands, plastering the city with posters and flyers featuring the missing duo's pictures. They also appealed to the public for any information that might aid in the search. Despite numerous witnesses in the area at the time of their disappearance, none came forward with any information. The family's private search efforts continued for days, but yielded no answers. Sophia likely chose not to report the incident to the police because she and Spencer had recently had run-ins with the law. Just days before, Spencer had been arrested for drunk driving, and Sophia had been charged with aggressive behavior. As a result, Sophia may have decided that it would be safer to seek help from her mother rather than seek police intervention. It is also possible that Sophia was in a state of panic and was not thinking clearly at the time. Without more information about her situation, it is difficult to say for sure why she made this decision. Police tried to piece together events on May 26, 2018. Memorial Day was coming up. Sophia was not working that day, but Spencer agreed to cover a coworker's shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After work, the pair planned to meet up and attend the city's Lantern Festival together. Their plan was to spend the remainder of the day together, including a visit to a local lighthouse known for paranormal activity, which they were eager to experience. However, what happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. There is no information on who they met or where they went, and it is unknown if they had been drinking. It is known that Sophia's car was parked on the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. Sophia left her cell phone in the car, possibly due to forgetfulness. Sophia's phone was dead, so she decided to leave it behind. Spencer and Sophia took a small sailboat from campus. The boat had no motor and weighed only 14 pounds, with oars as the only means of propulsion, and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating through treacherous rocky shores without safety equipment. That was all the information police had that night. On Monday evening, a police search helicopter spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck in the rocks about 7 miles west of the lighthouse. The boat was covered in dust, indicating it had been there for some time. Although it has not been confirmed, police believe the sailboat may be the one Spencer and Sophia took from campus. Fingerprints found at the scene of the boat were never examined or disclosed to the public, making it impossible to determine if they matched the fingerprints of the missing young couple, Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford. A major obstacle in the investigation was the unavailability of certain key evidence. Spencer's phone was never recovered, and the police did not obtain his cell operator records, making it impossible to confirm if any calls were made to numbers other than Michelle's on the night of the disappearance. Both the lighthouse and the campus have security cameras, but unfortunately they were not working on the night of the disappearance, and therefore did not capture any video of the event. Additionally, a serious mistake was made by the police in not investigating the lighthouse immediately after the couple went missing. To keep the case in the public eye, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page called Searching for Sophia McKenna in July 2018. The page allowed the family to share updates, brochures, and pleas for information with the public. In a strange turn of events, a suspicious message was sent to Michelle from Sophia's social media account, requesting money, just weeks after the disappearance. This raised concerns about potential hacking, as the police had possession of Sophia's phone at the time. The investigation into Sophia's disappearance and Spencer's death has been closed. Police have been unable to come to a clear conclusion about what happened. On July 10th, a memorial service was held in Sophia's honor, organized by her family and friends. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Adrienne Jones. Adrienne Jessica Jones lived in Mansfield in 1995. At the age of 16, she made a strong impression on the surrounding community with her beauty. Adrienne was known for her hard work in school and her passion for sports, becoming a role model for many. In 1995, Adrienne was a junior at Mansfield High School. From the moment she started studying there, she quickly became a beloved figure. Her friends and teachers admired her kindness, intelligence, and positive spirit. Adrienne was an excellent and ambitious student. She took advanced classes and spent a lot of time studying every day. Her efforts were rewarded with high grades. After graduating from high school, Adrienne planned to become a veterinarian. In addition to her studies, Adrienne is also a talented athlete. She was a member of the women's soccer team and showed impressive skills. However, after an injury, she switched to the women's cross-country team. This shows Adrienne's perseverance and adaptability in both her studies and her sports. The decision to join the cross-country team helped Adrienne maintain an active lifestyle and improve her fitness. She accepted this new challenge and worked hard to improve her fitness. With her determination and dedication, Adrienne quickly became an important member of the team. In addition to her studies and sports activities, Adrienne also worked 20 hours a week at the fast food restaurant Golden Fried Chicken. She loved the attention, especially from teenage boys in Mansfield. A close friend described her as a flirt. Adrienne spent about 2 hours a day carefully applying makeup, always wanting to look perfect. Adrienne was a normal, well-behaved teenager who still tested her parents' boundaries. She had 2 younger brothers and was well protected by her parents. Due to the high crime rate in Mansfield, her parents imposed a curfew after 9 p.m. on weekends to ensure her safety. When Adrienne wanted to go out, such as to an amusement park or the movies, she had to notify her parents and show them her ticket as proof. To prevent her from sneaking out, her father even nailed her bedroom window shut. Although it was not frequent, there were a few times when Adrienne sneaked out in the middle of the night to meet up with friends. On Sunday, December 3, 1995, Adrienne was allowed by her parents to stay up late to talk on the phone with her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. Tracy was away on a family trip for the weekend, but Adrienne was desperate to get in touch with him. While they were talking, another call came in. Adrienne's mother heard her daughter was calling Tracy. When her mother asked who was calling, Adrienne said it was David, her cross-country teammate. Adrienne said David seemed upset about something. The next morning, Adrienne's family woke up as usual to get ready for work. When Adrienne's alarm clock continued to ring in her room, her mother began to worry. She went to check on her and found that Adrienne was disappeared. Her bed was made as if no one had slept in it the night before. Adrienne's mother tried to stay calm when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter was missing. At first, she thought Adrienne might have gone for a morning jog, but she quickly dismissed the idea when she saw that her daughter's running shoes were still in her room. Although Adrienne sometimes snuck out in the middle of the night to meet friends, she had never stayed out all night like this. Concerned for their daughter's safety, Adrienne's parents called the police. However, they had no idea that miles away, a man had just made a horrifying discovery on his farm. At approximately 7 a.m., on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, about 10 miles from Mansfield, a man discovered something unusual while going to get his mail. He noticed that the gate to his home had been knocked down. Curious, he decided to check and witnessed a horrifying scene. At first, he thought it was the carcass of a dead animal on the road, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much more horrifying. A man discovered the body of a young woman and quickly called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene. The young woman had been shot twice, with obvious wounds to her left cheek and forehead. It was clearly a targeted murder. In addition, police discovered the young woman with a severe head injury, along with numerous scratches and bruises on her arms and legs. These injuries may have been caused by her running over the barbed wire fence in front of the farm in a desperate attempt to escape. Police found the teen wearing pajamas, as if she was getting ready for bed before she was murdered. They suspected that the case may be gang-related or drug-related, given the execution-style nature of the murder. After finding the body, Grand Prairie Police quickly sent out a notification to agencies in the area. The notification included basic information about the victim, such as age, height, weight, and other identifying characteristics. The goal was to share information and increase awareness, in the hopes of finding a connection between the victim and missing persons cases reported to other agencies. Mansfield police quickly identified the teen murdered in Grand Prairie as Adrienne. They contacted Grand Prairie Police to coordinate the investigation. The next step was to break the sad news to Adrienne's family. Upon hearing the news of her daughter's murder, Adrienne's mother was devastated. Since Mansfield is a small town, news of Adrienne's death quickly spread to Mansfield High School, where she attended. Adrienne's classmates and friends were devastated by the news. Many theories were put forward about the cause of her death, the most common of which was drug use. Some people were also concerned about the possibility of a serial killer on the loose in the community. Her mother reported a phone call between Adrienne and her boyfriend Tracy, and another teenager named David had called at the same time. According to her mother, one of Adrienne's younger brothers heard the sound of a car engine outside the house sometime after midnight. When he looked out, he saw a pickup truck driving away. Police was trying to identify David, who had been in contact with Adrienne on the night of her murder. To gather more information, they approached Adrienne's cross-country coach. The coach said that there was a member of the team named David Graham. However, the coach was surprised to hear that David had called Adrienne, as there had been no previous indication that the two had a relationship. David Graham was a typical American teenager. At the age of 7, after seeing an air show, David decided to become an Air Force pilot and told his father about his dream. Since then, he has worked hard to make his dream come true. At Mansfield High School, David was a popular and well-liked student. He had a natural charm and was always cheerful. Although many girls were interested in him, it was Diane Michelle Zamora, a senior, who pursued David. Diane stood out from the crowd because she shared David's desire to join the military and was actively pursuing her goal. After Adrienne was murdered, the police interviewed David Graham. David admitted to knowing Adrienne since they were both on the cross-country team, but insisted that they were just casual friends. The police asked David if he had been in contact with Adrienne the night she was murdered. David denied it completely, saying that he had been home studying with his girlfriend Diane Zamora that night. The police thoroughly investigated David as a suspect in Adrienne's murder. They contacted Adrienne's friends to find out more information. One of Adrienne's closest friends said that she knew all of Adrienne's secrets, but had never heard Adrienne mention David. Furthermore, when the police checked Adrienne's phone contacts, they did not find David's phone number. This discovery further confirmed that David had nothing to do with Adrienne's murder. So the police eliminated David from the list of suspects. They turned their attention to Tracy Smith, Adrienne's boyfriend. However, the police quickly established that Tracy had a solid alibi. On the night of the murder, he was out of town with his family. In addition, Tracy voluntarily took and passed a lie detector test. This evidence further proved Tracy's innocence in the case. During his interview with the police, Tracy Smith provided important information about Adrienne's murder. He said that on the night of the murder, while talking to Adrienne on the phone, she had told him that someone named Brian had called. Based on this statement, the police investigated and identified Brian as a local teenager whose full name was Brian McMillan. The police believed that Brian might be involved in the case and needed to be further investigated. During the investigation, the police discovered important information about Brian McMillan. They learned that Brian had worked at a pharmacy near the restaurant where Adrienne worked. Brian had developed a crush on Adrienne and frequently visited the restaurant to peek at her. However, Adrienne felt uncomfortable with his constant presence. When the police interviewed Brian about Adrienne's murder, he initially denied any involvement with her. However, Brian later admitted that he knew Adrienne. The police questioned Brian about Adrienne's murder. Brian did not remember talking to Adrienne on the night of her murder. He admitted that he had been drinking that night because he was depressed and lonely. Brian also confessed that he had been at Adrienne's house on the night of the murder. At the end of the interview, the police wanted Brian to take a lie detector test, but Brian's father refused to do so for his son. A week after the police interview, Brian was arrested at home. The police thought carefully and decided to carry a weapon because they suspected Brian might have a gun. They wanted to ensure everyone's safety during the arrest. Brian was charged with Adrienne's murder. However, many of his friends spoke out in his support, describing him as a gentle person with no violent tendencies. This created a contradiction between the police's accusations and the comments of those who knew Brian. Brian's father confirmed that his son was home the night Adrienne was murdered. Brian was held in custody for 3 weeks, including Christmas and New Year's, pending further investigation and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office asked Brian to take a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. Due to the lack of evidence linking Brian to Adrienne's murder, the district attorney's office decided to release him. After 9 months of investigating Adrienne's murder, the Mansfield, Texas police made a major breakthrough. The information came from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane was a student at the Naval Academy. According to reports from officers at the academy, Diane admitted to several classmates that she and her boyfriend David Graham had murdered a girl named Adrienne Jones while they were living in Mansfield, Texas. Police from Mansfield traveled to Annapolis, Maryland to question Diane shortly after receiving the information. During the interview, Diane denied all of her previous confessions. However, the Naval Academy decided to suspend her and send her home while the investigation was ongoing. After failing to get any information from Diane, the police traveled to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to interview David at the Air Force Academy. When questioned, David said he did not understand why Diane would make up the story about killing Adrienne. During the interview, David began to lose his temper and asked to write a statement. He wrote a 4.5-page confession letter detailing how he and his girlfriend Diane planned to kill Adrienne. In the letter, David recounted an incident that occurred in November 1995, when he offered to give Adrienne a ride home. On the way, they stopped in an elementary school parking lot and had sex. David felt extremely remorseful after cheating on his girlfriend Diane. He loved her very much and knew that his actions would hurt her deeply. One night, while the two were studying for the SATs together, they had an argument. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, David decided to confess. He sat down on a chair, sobbed, and admitted to Diane that he had been unfaithful. After David confessed to Diane that he had been unfaithful and had an affair with Adrienne, Diane felt extremely hurt and angry. David's betrayal had broken her heart. In a fit of rage, Diane argued and yelled at David. She even wished he were dead and felt deep hatred for Adrienne. Diane's emotions were so strong that it was difficult for her to understand and accept what had happened. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, David told Diane that he was willing to do anything to save their relationship. David revealed that he and Diane had decided that in order to save their love, they needed to kill someone. They chose Adrienne as their victim. In his confession letter, David recounted that on December 3rd, he called Adrienne and arranged to meet her secretly late at night. He told Adrienne not to tell anyone about the meeting. David had originally planned to meet Adrienne alone, kill her, and dump her body in a lake. However, at 2:30 a.m., David picked Adrienne up in his car, and Diane secretly accompanied him by hiding in the back seat. David drove to a remote location 10 miles from town. Here, he turned off the highway and onto a road called Satan Road. David stopped the car on the side of the road. Adrienne gently adjusted her sitting position, thinking that she and David were about to have a private moment. However, David had silently called Diane out of the trunk of the car. Diane appeared from behind, walked around the front of the car, and approached. As she approached, she came face to face with Adrienne, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Diane attacked Adrienne with a dumbbell from David's exercise equipment. Despite being badly injured, Adrienne escaped through the window of David's car. David and Diane panicked, so David grabbed a 9mm Makarov and chased Adrienne. Due to her head wound, Adrienne did not get far and collapsed in a nearby field. When David caught up, he shot Adrienne twice and returned to the car. After Adrienne died, the first words Diane and David said to each other were, "I love you." After David confessed to killing Adrienne, the police returned to question Diane. Surprisingly, Diane also gave her own confession. Both David and Diane were arrested and charged with premeditated murder. However, both later recanted their initial statements. David claimed that Diane was the real culprit, while Diane accused David of acting alone. In 1998, Diane's trial took place in February of that year. During the trial, several witnesses testified that Diane had shown no remorse for killing Adrienne. After deliberations, the jury returned a verdict on February 17, finding Diane guilty of premeditated murder. As a result of this verdict, Diane was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. In the same case, David Graham was also convicted of Adrienne's murder and received the same sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Karina Vetrano. On Tuesday, August 2, 2016, Karina Vetrano met her father, Philip, after work. They had planned to spend time together as family gatherings had become increasingly rare due to everyone's busy schedules. Karina was juggling 2 jobs at the time. Philip picked her up and took her to his home, where they shared stories about their week. As Karina prepared to head home, she invited her father to join her for a jog, an activity they often did together. However, Philip declined, explaining that his back was hurting badly and he thought he might need a new prescription or that the change in weather was affecting him. He offered to call a cab for her instead. Karina turned down the offer because she was focused on training for an upcoming marathon and thought jogging would be helpful. Unbeknownst to her parents, this would be the last time they saw their daughter. At 5:45 p.m., she left her father's house to go for a jog. Starting at Spring Creek Park, a peaceful oasis surrounded by greenery in the heart of the city. Large parts of the park are inaccessible due to dense bush and swamps, so Karina's father, Philip, advised her to run her usual route to avoid strangers and unexplored paths. However, Karina's desire for solitude led her to disregard her father's advice. She wandered into a deserted, grassy area. Karina's tranquil moment was short-lived. A severe pain struck the back of her head, and she collapsed. This careless decision proved fatal for she. 2 hours had passed since they bid farewell to their youngest daughter, and she was nowhere to be found. The Philip household became enveloped in anxiety and uncertainty. She should have returned home by now or at least responded to her parents' calls, as she had promised to carry her cell phone with her. Karina's father sensed something was wrong and decided to seek help from his neighbor, who happened to be the chief of the New York City Police Department. Since they had a good relationship, the chief knew Philip wouldn't contact him without a valid concern. After that, Karina was reported missing, and police launched a search for her, focusing on the park area and surrounding streets. Experienced K-9 units were brought in to aid in the search. It's well known that the first 24 hours after someone vanishes are the most critical and revealing. To maximize the chances of finding the missing person, law enforcement utilized every resource available. Meanwhile, Philip, along with a group of volunteers, conducted his own search for his daughter. He thoroughly scoured the park, making phone calls as he searched. As dusk fell, Philip spotted something in the grass and walked towards it. As he approached, he recognized Karina's phone and hoped she might have just misplaced it. However, as he cautiously made his way through the thicket towards the police officers, he stumbled upon something in the grass. He then stumbled upon the partially undressed body of a female corpse lying face down. Philip turned the body over and was met with a devastating sight. It was the face of his daughter, Karina. A heart-wrenching scream burst from Philip's chest as he realized the unthinkable. It turned out his daughter Karina hadn't lost her phone as he initially thought. The truth was far more devastating. Karina had lost her life. The police rushed to his side as he let out a desperate cry. They gently pulled him away from Karina's body, explaining that the area was now a crime scene and everything needed to be protected as evidence. The silence of the car ride home was oppressive, punctuated only by Mr. Phillip's tormented thoughts. He was consumed by the daunting task of breaking the news to his wife about their daughter's tragic passing. Memories of Karina's life flooded his mind. He remembered the day she was born, July 12, 1986, in Queens. From a young age, Phillip had been incredibly proud of his second daughter, Karina. She was a model child, obedient, well-mannered, and diligent in her studies. One of his fondest memories was taking the little girl to school for her first day. Karina's academic prowess had led her to earn a master's degree in speech pathology from St. John's University, a testament to her hard work and determination. Karina always wanted to help children, particularly those with autism. Additionally, she was a talented individual with a variety of interests, including traveling and writing. She was also an avid sports enthusiast, with a special fondness for running. Her and her father's similar passion for running brought them closer together. Phillip remembered how he had protected her from those who were courting her, not wanting anyone to hurt her. He hoped that one day she would find true love and build a strong family like his own, giving him and his wife wonderful grandkids. As Mr. Phillip approached his home, he felt the weight of his emotions. Taking a deep breath, he mustered the strength to put on a brave face. He knew his family needed him to be strong. His wife met him at the door and saw the pain in his face. She didn't need him to say a word, she immediately understood what was wrong. She rushed to his side, embracing him as she burst into tears. Karina's loved ones were understandably shocked and distraught when they learned about her sudden death. It was difficult for them to accept the brutal nature of the attack. The investigation revealed that Karina had put up a fierce struggle. Her clenched fists were proof that she had resisted her attacker until the very end. Injuries such as bruises and abrasions were found on her body, and her athletic clothes were torn. The autopsy revealed that Karina's death was ultimately caused by asphyxiation. However, her skull had also suffered blunt force trauma, likely from being hit with a stone. A visible mark on her neck further confirmed the violent nature of the attack. The forensic examination supported the police's initial suspicions, indicating that the crime was both deeply personal and extremely brutal. Further evidence of the struggle was found under Karina's fingernails. Dirt and grass were found embedded under her nails, indicating she attempted to pull away from her attacker. Specialists also examined her mouth, discovering that several of her teeth were cracked and knocked out, indicating that she had bitten down in self-defense. Karina's neck showed multiple scratches, evidence of the intense struggle she went through. Her attacker's grip had been unrelenting, prompting Karina to grab at her attacker with all her might in an attempt to force them to let go. Karina's strong will to survive was evident in her fierce resistance, and she fought valiantly for her life. Following her tragic death, another disturbing discovery found in Howard Beach, Massachusetts, where Karina lived. A second jogger's body was found in a secluded area with dense foliage, causing concern that a serial offender may be at large. To investigate these similarities, geneticists compared DNA samples collected from both crime scenes. DNA samples were discovered on both victims. However, the DNA analysis yielded an unexpected result. The samples did not match, indicating they belonged to different suspects. Notably, one DNA sample was found under Karina's fingernails, on her back, and on her phone. Despite the small amount, investigators were able to successfully analyze the evidence. The DNA found at the crime scene was the only lead in the investigation, providing a way to identify the killer. Given that most murders are committed by someone known to the victim, the police couldn't rule out any possibilities. To explore this, Karina's father submitted his DNA for testing, as he was the first person to discover her body. Unfortunately, the testing was done on the same day as Karina's funeral. Karina's other relatives also underwent DNA testing, but no matches were found. Investigators then conducted interviews with Karina's relatives and friends to determine if she had any enemies. However, everyone they spoke to seemed to respect and love her. As a result, the investigators came up with a new theory. The crime was likely committed by someone who targeted Karina because of her physical appearance and was driven by impulsive desires. Feeling stuck, authorities turned to the public for assistance, offering a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the killer's capture. The public responded in large numbers, with over 250 leads, 600 genetic tests, and more than 1,700 reports being compiled. However, despite the extensive effort, the investigation remained unresolved. One major challenge was the possibility that the perpetrator had no prior record of crime, making it even more difficult to identify and catch them. On August 31, 2016, a utility worker reported seeing a suspicious person near the scene of Karina's death. He told police that he saw a man emerge from the bushes in a restricted area of the park and run north. The New York Police Department created a sketch of the suspect based on his description. However, by December 2016, they acknowledged that this individual may have been an innocent bystander. The release of the sketch did not yield any new leads, and the investigation came to a standstill. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the case on December 4, 2016. According to the FBI, the perpetrator was likely familiar with the area, especially the park where the crime occurred. This suggested that the attacker may have lived nearby, which is why they thought it was an ideal location to commit the crime without being detected. As a result, the police were cautious not to show their emergence in the area, knowing the perpetrator might be avoiding them to avoid capture. To follow up on the investigation, the police also conducted screenings of local African American men who fit the suspect's description. However, this effort did not lead to any breakthroughs in the case. Detective John Russo, who was part of the investigation, recalled an important detail. He had noticed a young man in a hoodie frequently walking around the park. John even tried to follow him out of curiosity about his strange behavior. The young man moved slowly and paused for extended periods in front of houses near the park, as if he were looking for targets to rob. However, then John lost track of him. 2 months later, a store owner reported seeing a person who looked similar. This made John rethink his earlier observations. He re-examined the file of a teenager matching the description, whose name was Chanel Lewis. Detectives became interested in Chanel because of his strange behavior. They started asking questions to his friends and teachers to gather more information. It was discovered that Chanel had shown interest in harming the girls, which made investigators more suspicious of him. No other leads, officers decided to focus on Chanel. Chanel's life was unremarkable, mirroring that of many young African Americans in Brooklyn's low-income housing. He resided in a housing complex several miles from Spring Creek Park, where he lived with his mother, 3 sisters, and their children. Chanel was unemployed, but despite being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he managed to graduate from a private school catering to students with emotional and behavioral challenges. Chanel's former classmates described him as a quiet and isolated individual who was frequently bullied and belittled by his peers. He had no close friends and was often ridiculed for his appearance and clothing choices. However, after being teased, Chanel would typically smirk and walk away rather, earning him the derogatory nickname African Lizard. Not everyone saw Chanel in a negative light, though. A classmate named Danielle remembered him as intelligent, with good grades, who would occasionally share amusing videos with her on the bus. Danielle never witnessed Chanel displaying cruel behavior. According to some sources, Chanel once claimed that he wanted to slit the throats of all the girls in high school. He then asked, "What if he bring a knife to school?" However, Dr. Edward Dana, the executive director of Lewis's school, asserted that Chanel never harmed anyone during that time, nor was he disciplined. Despite this, Chanel struggled with bullying during his teenage years, which left him traumatized. Nevertheless, he aspired to work in social services, driven by a desire to help people in distress. Whenever conflicts arose at home, he would often take long walks, frequently visiting a local park. Chanel had a few minor run-ins with the police. 2 incidents occurred in the Spring Creek area for ordinance violations, and another took place in May 2016 for urinating in public. In another incident, a store owner reported he for loitering with a crowbar, but responding officers released him after checking his ID and finding no prior incidents. The police kept this information on record. It was later discovered that during the time of Karina's death, Chanel was not at home. After an argument with his family, he had gone to the park. Upon his return, his appearance was disheveled, with torn clothing and visible bruises and abrasions. Chanel's mother inquired about what had happened, and he claimed he had been attacked. His account matched the timeline with a witness's description of a man fleeing the park. Additionally, on August 3, 2016, Chanel's father, a former school principal, took him to the hospital for treatment of severe wounds, most of which were cuts, and he also had an injured hand. The investigators reviewed the medical records from that day and found the story plausible. On February 4, 2017, Chanel was brought to the police station and voluntarily provided his DNA for analysis. Would a perpetrator willingly do this? Detectives wondered. The interrogation began on the morning of February 5. He admitted that he was indeed in the park around 5 p.m. on August 2, 2016, but clarified he was walking on dirt paths, not through the thickets, and listening to music. He confessed to encountering a young woman jogging with her phone in her hand. When asked by detectives if something happened when he encountered her, Chanel nodded and quietly said yes. Chanel's vague answers to investigators left everyone confused. He eventually said he was angry and that what happened happened. Investigators were skeptical of this confession, as it could raise questions for the jury at trial. They hoped Chanel would provide more details. Chanel explained that he had gone for a walk in the park to clear his mind after a family argument. Then he saw Karina walking alone and decided to follow her. He said that as she passed him, he grabbed her by the shoulders, wrestled her to the ground, and hit her in the face about 5 times to stop her from screaming. He said his punches knocked out some of her teeth and he injured her hand. Chanel noted that the struggle lasted about 5 minutes, during which she fought back violently, scratching and biting his. Chanel dragged her off the path into tall grass, where he tried to undress and assault her. Despite her shock, she continued to resist until Chanel strangled her. Then he realizing only afterward that she was no longer alive. When asked if he had known the victim before, he replied, he did not know her before this. It all happened by chance. The motive for his actions was even more surprising. He revealed that loud music from a neighborhood gang member had triggered his anger and uncontrollable aggression. Negative emotions were directed at the unfortunate woman, which seemed like a strange reason for the act. Investigators were no longer confused after obtaining DNA results that matched exactly. Microscopic traces found on Karina's body and phone belonged to Chanel. With this evidence, the police and prosecutor concluded that the case was ready for court. However, the motive still seemed unclear. It's possible that Chanel had seen Karina before, since he often visited the park and may have noticed her with her father. He might have developed an interest in her and tried to approach her, but after being rejected, he became angry and attacked her, resulted in a tragic incident. This explanation would make more sense. The trial against Chanel Lewis began on November 5, 2018. Despite his previous statements to the authorities, he pleaded not guilty, a claim supported by his family, who denied his involvement in the crime. The prosecution charged Chanel with murder and sexual assault, with potential penalties ranging from 25 years or life in prison. The debate about Chanel's guilt played out not only in the courtroom but also in the media. Chanel's defense team questioned whether the police followed proper procedures during his arrest, along with various news outlets alleging racial bias and discrimination. However, the judge dismissed these claims as unfounded, stating that the investigation followed legal procedures. The prosecution provided solid evidence and DNA analysis results. In contrast, the defense argued that the evidence was inadequate and compromised due to the high number of people present at the crime scene, including the victim's father, who found her body. Forensic biologist Linda Rosano noted that the likelihood of the DNA matching someone other than Chanel was 1 in 6 trillion. The prosecutor also presented his phone records, which showed internet searches related to second chances and forgiveness in Catholicism, raising the question of what sin Chanel was trying to make amends for. Additionally, the release of Chanel's confession video led to more controversy because his lawyer asserted that he confessed under great pressure from the police. They alleged that police may have fabricated evidence by starting the recording only after Chanel was coerced and that the search of his home did not follow proper procedures. The defense argued that the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death was mishandled at the start. As public pressure for the suspect's arrest grew, Chanel Lewis became the scapegoat. The jury took the defense's argument seriously but still had difficulty reaching a verdict. This led the judge to declare a mistrial on November 21, 2018. A retrial was initially set for January 22, 2019, but was later rescheduled for March. After 5 hours of reconsideration, Chanel Lewis was found guilty of Karina Vetrano's murder and sentenced to life without parole on July 23, 2019. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Courtney Holden. Courtney Holden was born on February 28, 1992. When she was 2 years old, she was sent to an orphanage. Life there was not happy, not only for Courtney but for all the other children. Every day at the orphanage began with a prayer. Children of all ages prayed to the Almighty to give them a family and a happy life. Finally, Courtney's dream came true when she was adopted by the Holden family. Courtney arrived in Spokane at the age of 4 and began living in the Holden family home with Joshua and some other foster children. However, instead of finding a loving family as she had hoped, her life here was worse than at the orphanage. What Courtney experienced at the Holden home could only be described as a real nightmare. From a young age, she was forced to do all the housework. She had to clean the whole house and wash the dishes after every meal for the entire family. If she made a mistake, she was punished. Surprisingly, the Holden family treated the other foster children better. No one understood why they disliked her so much. Judy Holden was old when she adopted Courtney, and she was the last child they had received from the orphanage. Perhaps this explains their inexplicable cruelty and hatred towards Courtney. She was forbidden to go out without permission and was often abused. Visitors to the house often heard Judy and Joshua calling Courtney Cinderella, as if she were in a fairy tale, but in reality, she was more like a slave to her cruel stepmother and siblings. Courtney was very sensitive and had become accustomed to a difficult life with the Holden family. She feared her foster mother and felt terrified just seeing her brother Joshua. He did not allow her to communicate with her friends. She was not allowed to use a cell phone or other modern devices. She was only allowed to leave the house when necessary and always had to ask for permission. She only enjoyed fresh air and chatted with her neighbors when she was alone in the backyard. However, she became accustomed to this life and did not feel bitter. She still respected her adoptive parents because they were the only family she knew, and she had no concept of a normal family. Courtney experienced a period of freedom when Joshua, due to conflicts with their parents, moved in with his sister for an extended time. For Courtney, this was the happiest period of her life. She finally experienced the freedom she had always longed for, allowing her to go out, walk around, and meet friends. After finishing school, Courtney fell in love for the first time. Michael was an ideal partner. She felt the care and attention from him that she had never received from anyone else. Every time she met Michael, Courtney felt extremely happy. Their relationship lasted until 2011, when they had a son. Michael was eager for Courtney to move in with him to create a complete family. However, for unknown reasons, Courtney refused this offer. She continued to live in a Holden household, which she did not like, and ended her relationship with Michael. After the Holden family went through many changes, their home became deserted. The adopted children grew up and left, and John Holden, Courtney's adoptive father, was passed away. For a while, Courtney lived with her adoptive mother, Judy, and sometimes her son Joshua was allowed to visit with Judy's permission. Their life was quite peaceful when Joshua, Courtney's brother, was away. However, after their father died in 2014, Joshua returned and began causing trouble for the family. He installed many surveillance cameras around the house on Hero Avenue, near Rogers High School in Northeast Spokane. Signs that said, "Smile, you're being watched," were placed all over the yard, with cameras pointing in many directions. This made Courtney nervous because she knew that going out would get her in trouble with Joshua. Courtney's life once again became difficult and uncertain. Around 2015, Courtney revealed to a neighbor that she was again deprived of her right to use a cell phone, manage her social media accounts, communicate with people outside the family, drive, or leave the house without Joshua's permission. After Courtney gave birth, Joshua became so bitter that he forced her to cut off all contact with the baby's father. Courtney silently complied. The neighbor noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms. When asked, she frankly admitted that Joshua hit her. They were worried and did not understand why Courtney would endure such abuse. They tried to help her by reporting it to the police, but the Holden family always tried to suppress the matter. This was partly because Courtney never publicly admitted that she was being threatened by her brother. Eventually, Courtney was forbidden to talk to neighbors and was only allowed to go out at night. She silently complied. Courtney knew Joshua better than anyone. He was a large, overweight man with considerable strength and was often abusive. Friends of Joshua described him as paranoid, ruthless, and unpredictable. He had bragged in public about his ability to easily end a life and dispose of a body without difficulty. He had a notable criminal record. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but due to lack of evidence and the victim's unwillingness to cooperate with the police, he was released. He was also suspected of assaulting and sexually abusing a woman in 2003 when the perpetrator could not be identified. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and burglary. These incidents forced him to flee his parents' home for several years. After returning, Joshua became more violent. He kept complete control over Courtney. She largely cut off contact with her friends, saying she was afraid to go out for fear that Joshua would find out and make things worse. A friend kept in touch with Courtney every day on Facebook until Joshua found out. In her last message, nearly 2 years ago, Courtney said, "I have to go. Joshua is coming home soon." After that, her account has since been permanently deleted. Those who know the Holdens say the family's relationship is unusual. They are surprised that Courtney's child calls Judy mom and Joshua dad, while only calling his biological mother by her first name. This has led some to suspect that Joshua may be the child's biological father. Neighbors and acquaintances have criticized the Holdens' odd lifestyle and antisocial behavior, and have tried to stay away from the house. In August 2018, after an argument, Courtney tried to leave the house with a suitcase of belongings. Her mother, Judy, yelled at her to go home, but Courtney refused. Joshua forcibly took Courtney back into the house. Judy closed the door, and Courtney was unable to escape. This was the last time the neighbors, and perhaps anyone outside the family, saw Courtney. After that, she lived a life of isolation from the outside world. It took nearly 2 years for people to start worrying about her disappearance. In October 2019, Michael expressed concern about not seeing her for nearly 2 years. He wanted to see the child, so he reported Courtney missing to the police on October 24th. The police went to search Holden's house and were surprised to find Courtney was not there. Joshua and Judy refused to cooperate. Judy only allowed the police to look through Courtney's room and then told them to leave. A search dog was used but found nothing. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her child and run away. However, they could not explain who was withdrawing Courtney's Social Security benefits and using her electronic food stamps. On the day the police searched the house, Judy and Joshua withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. The next day, a woman claiming to be Courtney called the National Crime Information Center, saying she was safe and did not want to be searched. Police traced the call and found that the woman was Courtney's half-sister. Joshua and Judy later gave conflicting explanations for Courtney's disappearance. They said she ran away with a truck driver and then with a secret lover. Courtney's absence, along with the changing accounts of those who lived with her, made it clear that the Holdens were hiding something. In late October 2019, Joshua and Judy Holden abruptly left Spokane, leading detectives to suspect they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. They were found in Texas, at the home of one of Judy's adopted daughters. Authorities were able to charge them with withholding Courtney's welfare and identity theft, leading to their arrest in Texas. In early October, the Spokane Police Department wanted to check on Courtney's status. The case quickly became a missing persons investigation, which was assigned to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser. Courtney was officially declared missing. Alerts were sent to all states, and the media picked up the story, triggering a widespread search. When police and detectives went to check on her home, Joshua and Judy Holden have continued to refuse to cooperate with the investigation. Beside that, Randy told the vet he was worried Courtney might be dead and mentioned he was particularly concerned about Joshua's history of violence. Joshua had been charged with assault in the past, but the case was dismissed when the victim stopped cooperating with prosecutors. Investigators are now gathering DNA evidence and court records from that case, which show Joshua was also suspected in another attack in 2003. Neighbors and family described Joshua as mentally unstable, cruel, and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. One neighbor revealed that Joshua was unemployed and that Judy feared him. The neighbor said Joshua and Judy often bragged about how they had eluded the police. Joshua also claimed that killing and hiding a body was easy. Especially when you have kids, you can't just disappear, said Detective Randy. Courtney was also described in court records as a devoted mother who never abandoned her children. For more than 18 months, Courtney was confined to her home and was not allowed to leave. Joshua and Judy gave neighbors and relatives various excuses for her absence, from traveling with her truck driver boyfriend to running away with her fiancé. At one point, they said she was home but not available to receive visitors. When Randy visited their home in early October, Judy claimed that Courtney had just returned home a few days earlier and was taking a walk with her son. However, when asked for her phone number, Judy slammed the door. The police then forced her to let them in to check Courtney's room. According to Randy, Judy appeared very nervous about the situation. According to Randy's court records, the house was extremely messy with items piled everywhere, including on the kitchen counter. Courtney's room was also in disarray, with an empty mattress. Randy commented that it appeared that no one lived there. At one point, Judy panicked. When Randy asked to check the rest of the house for Courtney's child, Judy ordered the investigators to leave. Later that day, a neighbor informed Randy that they had seen Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leave in a truck, along with a child. Detective Randy also became suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. She received her last prescription in July 2017, although she had been taking her medication for months before she disappeared. Despite gaps in her medical records, money continued to be withdrawn from Courtney's bank account each month, and her EBT card was used to purchase groceries. Surveillance footage confirmed Joshua and Judy shopping with a small child. They was also caught on camera withdrawing the remaining money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was declared missing in early October. On October 24th, Joshua and Judy left the home. When police arrived to execute a search warrant, Randy noted that they discovered the DVR from the security camera system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were also missing. By mid-November, Joshua and Judy's cell phone numbers had been canceled. However, that same day, 2 new phone numbers with Texas area codes were activated on their accounts. About a month after the Holdens moved out, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was actually one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They said they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years and that Judy was retired. However, there were inconsistencies in their information. The man told the police that Joshua and Judy had a child, while Judy's daughter insisted that the child was Courtney's. In mid-December, Randy traveled to Texas to look for Joshua and Judy. Police found them at Judy's daughter's house, along with Courtney's son. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested on multiple charges: identity theft, interference with child custody, unauthorized use of Courtney's bank account, and concealment of her child. The child was found safe and returned to his father. No other family members have been charged with any crime. Police searched Judy's home in Spokane with a search dog but found no trace of Courtney. A search of a home in Texas also turned up nothing. Police also searched a car and trailer belonging to Judy at an RV park in Oklahoma. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, are currently in custody in Texas and have refused to answer police questions. They also refused to be extradited to Spokane. With insufficient evidence to prove their involvement in Courtney's disappearance, it is likely that Joshua and Judy will be released. This is perhaps one of the most mysterious disappearances ever. I have 4 notebooks full of different information, Randy said of the month-long investigation. Judy and Joshua continue to maintain that they had nothing to do with Courtney's disappearance, while police believe she is likely dead but have unfortunately not been able to prove it. Domestic violence experts point to a number of factors as to why cases like Courtney's are not always reported. One is the societal assumption that someone else will take care of it. According to Morgan Kern, Director of Counseling and Outreach at the YWCA, fear of retaliation can also be a factor. And people sometimes view it as a family issue, something to be dealt with at home. Although Judy and Joshua have been accused of multiple acts, they have not been charged directly in Courtney's disappearance. However, many still suspect they knew what happened. Joshua not only had a history of aggression but had also claimed to be capable of killing and hiding a body from the police.